We'll call the Wednesday meeting of City of San Clemente Planning Department, Planning Commission open. Who would like to do the pledge? Let's have, Michael, you want to do the pledge?
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Brown?
Here.
Commissioner Kaczynski? Here. Commissioner Talley?
Here.
Commissioner Wu?
Here.
Chair Pro Tem Blackwell?
Here.
Vice Chair Rulin? Absent. Chair Crandall?
Here. Thank you very much. The next item is special orders of business, and we have none. We have 5 minutes to review and approve, but I think we have, let's see, do we have a quorum for the first one? Don Brown, Jason. No, there are only 4 of us here. There are only 3 of us here to review it. Do we just hold that over again? We're going to hold that over to the next one. That is the minutes.
Sometime this year we'll get it done.
Yeah, that is the Planning Commission meeting of March 6th. So that will hold true for the study session and the minutes. So now we are on to the minutes of the study session of March 20th. Kaczynski's, we have a quorum for that one. Do we have any revisions or a motion to approve? This is on the March 20th study session. Okay, do we have a second for approval? Motion by Kaczynski, second by Blackwell. All in favor? Oh, excuse me.
Brown and will abstain. Sorry. Talley and Brown.
Talley and Brown will abstain. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 4, 0, and 2. We have the minutes of the regular Planning Commission meeting of March 20th. Any corrections or a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the regular Planning Commission of March 20th.
Do we have a second? Second. We have a motion by Blackwell, second by Kaczynski. All in favor? Aye.
Brown and Talley abstain.
So passes, all opposed? None, so it passes 4-0-2. And then we have the minutes of April 3rd. Let's see, Kaczynski, Rulin. We only have 3 here again, so that will have to be carried over. And that takes care of the minutes. Our next item is oral and written communications. Members of the audience may address the commission on matters of public interest which pertain to the city and are not otherwise on the agenda. If you wish to speak, please step forward to the microphone, state your name and city of residence, and make your presentation. Please limit your presentation to 3 minutes. I see one. Can you grab the one card?
That may be for an agenda.
This is for 9A. Does anyone want to speak on the oral and written communications? Okay, very good. The consent calendar is the next item to establish establishment of citywide posted speed limits and a 1-year review of conditional use permit 18056, JD's Indoor Entertainment, 215 South El Camino Real. Do we have anyone that wants to call those up or speak on them?
I do not want to speak on the citywide speed limits.
I'd like to call up the 7B and 1-year review.
Okay. Since we're calling it up, Mal, do we open for public comment?
Yes, and you can also move any items that have not been called up.
Okay, very good.
Excuse me, Bart, do we
Yes.
have everything in order here?
Yes, we're on film.
Technically? Okay, good.
Even though we don't see it.
Yes, she just didn't turn on the monitors.
And
That's Eileen normally.
As long as it's recorded, we're good.
we're okay. And I just received a report from Eileen. She'll be here in a couple minutes. So.
Very good. Okay, so do we have any, one who wants to make a motion to move along the establishment of citywide posted speed limits?
I'll make that motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Here is Eileen, our recording secretary. She is jumping into the fray. The one item that was brought up, one-year review of conditional use permit 18056 JD's Indoor Entertainment, 215 South El Camino Real. Is there anyone in the public that would like to speak to that one item? I'll close public comment. Jen, you had questions or?
Yeah, I have the questions. If you go to page 2, the second to last paragraph, talking about OCSD, it says Orange County Sheriff Department reviewed calls for police services associated with the subject address. OCSD determined that the indoor entertainment has not resulted in any public safety issues or concerns. My question is, does OCSD receive any complaint about the noise?
No, good evening, Commissioners. Stephanie Rojas, Senior Planner with the Community Development Department. OCSD did not receive any noise complaints. The calls for service that they received, they were various, but none of them were directly related to the live entertainment that has been provided at the restaurant. And typically noise complaints, we also check with our code compliance staff to ensure that they did not receive any complaints, and none were received during that review period.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, with that cleared up, does anyone have a motion to move that item along?
I'll make a motion to file the report.
Do we have a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
That was motion by Tally, second by Wolf.
Good catch there.
Okay, the next item is the public hearing. We have one item on the public hearing, 1640 North El Camino Real, A and B, conditional use permit 17322, minor cultural heritage permit 17420, and minor exception permit 18628, La Colombiana Restaurant. And Gabriel Perez will be presenting that to us.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman, members of the Plan Commission. This item is La Colombiana. It's a proposed expansion of an existing restaurant. The applicant is requesting approval of a conditional use permit, a minor cultural heritage permit, and a minor exception permit. The location of La Colombiana is 1640 North El Camino Real in the North Beach area. It is within the mixed-use one zone, architectural overlay, and the coastal zone. And this photograph shows the actual building where La Colombiana is located. The difference is that sign is no longer there. This is a site plan. Identified in blue is the location of the restaurant in the existing multi-tenant retail building, and it's surrounded by mostly commercial uses to the north, to the west, and to the east. To the south, across the alley, are residential multifamily uses. Description of the project: the applicant is requesting a conditional use approval to allow full alcohol service for indoor and outdoor dining. They are proposing more than 4 tables, which requires a conditional use permit. No live entertainment is proposed. The minor cultural heritage permit is required for proposed remodels in the architectural overlay, and the minor exception permit is required for waivers of 3 parking spaces. The applicant's requesting those waivers. The pictures shown identify the building facade as it appears today, and you can see on the left-hand side the outdoor dining that currently exists, and on the right photo identifies the existing vacant space that the applicant proposes to expand their restaurant into. Here's a photograph of an adjacent property. This is a parking lot that is not part of the subject property, and it's currently used by La Colombiana patrons, but also the coffee shop adjacent. These are some photographs of the streetscape. This identifies the outdoor dining, as well as the sidewalk and El Camino Real. This identifies existing parking that's on site, and this is located to the rear of the building, adjacent to the alleyway. The applicant proposes a site plan as follows. They plan to repurpose the rear parking area to accommodate 10 parking spaces. They also propose to remove the existing trash enclosure to a new location and rebuild that trash enclosure. Also depicted on the site plan, shaded in gray, is the proposed area to be expanded for the restaurant. And the applicant proposes to expand the interior. The existing space is actually 949 square feet. They plan to expand an additional 1,008 square feet for a total of 1,957 square feet. The applicant also proposes to expand the outdoor dining area. The existing dining area is 171 square feet, and the applicant proposes to expand to 392 square feet. Depicted here is the floor plan, the proposed floor plan, and so this shows the restaurant proposed expansion, and the applicant would have 35 indoor seats and 29 outdoor seats. There would be 10 tables outside and a total of 64 seats for the restaurant. And the applicant is also requesting the sale of indoor and outdoor service of alcohol to provide a full range of alcohol beverages. The proposed restaurant expansion would require 10 parking spaces, actually a total of 13 parking spaces. Therefore, the applicant is requesting 3 parking waivers in order to satisfy parking requirements on site. Staff is supportive of parking waivers to be granted based on the findings of the North Beach parking study. That's provided as an attachment in your report. And the North Beach parking study identifies maximum occupancy for parking the area at 50%, and it was never identified to exceed that in the area of North Beach. The hours of operation proposed are 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. In terms of alcohol beverage service, the applicant proposes that service to be from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. So they would actually stop serving alcohol an hour before the restaurant closes. The Orange County Sheriff has reviewed the proposed request for full range of alcohol service and is in agreement that this could be done without any impacts to the surroundings. Depicted on this slide are the elevations that are proposed by the applicant. The applicant proposes some exterior modifications that would include expanding the outdoor dining area, a new trellis, wrought iron railing, outdoor heaters for the outdoor dining area, wood frame folding doors, also roof mounted equipment that would be screened, new landscaping, and a portion of the front wall would actually be modified and moved back 4 feet 7 inches to accommodate more outdoor seating. And because the building is within the architectural overlay, it's required to comply with Spanish colonial revival for this remodel. This slide depicts the landscaping that's proposed. So the applicant does propose a 24-inch landscape planter in front of the outdoor area, dining area. They also proposed a new queen palm tree that's depicted on the landscape plan. This plan was reviewed by Summers Murphy and Partners, This is a preliminary design. It would require a formal submittal after review by the Planning Commission. Staff can make the findings on this project. It is compliant with the general plan and zoning because it does provide a pedestrian-oriented use. It is consistent with the city design guidelines for minor remodels. The outdoor dining is separated from the residential area to the south, and it meets required development standards with the minor exception requested. One thing I did want to identify, we can make those findings based on some of the conditions that were added on the project regarding code compliance issues that were identified over time by the Code of Compliance Division. There are some outstanding city fines resulting from those code compliance actions. Some of those code compliance issues relate to the occupancy. So the occupancy approved for the restaurant was for 10 people. That was exceeded. The building official temporarily allowed for the applicant to exceed the occupancy to 23 until any discretionary permit for this expansion is approved. There's 2 code compliance conditions that were added to this project. Those are code conditions 4.3 and 4.4 that address payment of fines related to those code compliance actions. And Beverly Thompson from Code Compliance is present today, just in case the Planning Commission does have questions about the code compliance issues. The Design Review Committee did review the project as well, and they made some recommendations. Some of those recommendations weren't addressed, but we have conditioned them with this project. One of them is the eyebrow to the back of the building, and I can identify this on the project back here. So if you, this brown overhang here was identified in the conditions of approval that it be removed. In addition, the DRSC also recommended reducing the size of the outdoor patio to be able to accommodate an additional planter for an additional tree. With those conditions, staff can make the findings. It does recommend that the Planning Commission approve the conditional use permit, the minor cultural heritage permit, and the minor exception permit, and find the project exempt from CEQA. That's the end of my report. I'm happy to answer any questions. The applicant is in the audience. And I also want to bring your attention to some comments that we received from the public, and it should be in front of you on the dais. We did receive this this past week.
Very good. Questions for Mr. Perez? I've got one question. Did, during the development management team's meetings, did building bring up any questions about handicap parking and handicap access that you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of, but I have talked to the building official, and so if you look on the plans, the handicapped parking isn't identified. And so in discussions with him, if you look at the parking and the way that the parking is sloped, it would be considered technically infeasible to accommodate the handicap parking on site. And so there would have to be exception made by the building official.
Okay, very good. And then one other question I had was, with the parking to the rear, there's no public access from the rear, so all people using that parking have to go all the way around. There's no agreement to, is there an access agreement with the neighbor to even get to those parking places?
Not that I'm aware of, and maybe the applicant can also speak to that.
Okay, we'll start down here with Commissioner Wu.
Yes, I have a few questions. Well, Bart already asked a question about accessibility, so I'm going to leave that for later discussion. For the parking between La Columbia and the neighboring coffee, does the applicant have a shared parking agreement?
The applicant stated they don't have a shared parking agreement with adjacent property, but he could probably identify there is a relationship where they do allow it through a verbal agreement.
Okay.
But nothing
But it's
that's
not part of the application?
not part of the application.
And they don't have an easement to use that to cross our parking lot, and neither do they have a right to use that parking lot?
No easement that I'm aware of.
Okay. Now, in our zoning code, there is a section about North Beach parking overlay, which seem to have different requirement for the parking. And then we have a few places about this parking, about the parking requirement, but North Beach parking overlay, can you advise us in the, whether this parking overlay is in effect at all?
Yeah, there is the North Beach overlay, and I know this has come up before with the North Beach parking study. So the boundaries of that North Beach overlay are different than the North Beach parking study. But in terms of any standards that would impact this project, my understanding, the project does comply.
Is the North Beach parking overlay in effect and its related requirement?
Yes, it is in the zoning ordinance.
It is? Okay. But the restaurant require 13 or 10 spaces. Can you clarify that?
Yeah, it does require 13 spaces. They're able to accommodate 10 spaces on site. Therefore, they're requesting parking waivers for 3 spaces.
What happened to the vacant space? What if someone wants to, can anyone occupy the vacant space? They would have no parking.
Gabriel, the restaurant needs 10, and there's
Yes,
3 for the other commercial spaces.
Yes.
So that leaves only 7 available to the restaurant,
That-
too.
Yeah, that is correct. And so,
Okay, good. So the restaurant needs 10, and 3 is reserved for the vacant.
yeah,
So the total need is 13.
Correct.
And the 10 is provided, okay. Now, for the finding B for parking waiver, on page 2 of the staff report, it says, other non-residential users whose activities are not normally conducted during the same hours share parking spaces with the restaurant. Can you identify which non-residential users share parking spaces with the restaurant?
Once again, if the way I was reading it, I will jump in and say it's the 3 retail spaces would be available to them when the retail spaces aren't open for business.
Closed or open?
And they are not open
it's not
for
open
business.
right now.
Is that your answer?
Correct.
Okay,
There's no agreement with any other uses
okay.
outside of this
But
property.
it's conceivable that in the future, this retail space will be used by someone.
Potentially, yes.
Okay. And then, one more question. Have you considered the projected occupancy ratio, the parking occupancy ratio in North Beach area after Miramar Theater and restaurants become operational?
Have we considered
So,
if Miramar was occupied? What was the question?
because Miramar Theater and a restaurant received about, I believe it was 92 parking spaces waiver. And part of our justification is currently the North Beach area has a very low occupancy ratio, therefore there's enough capacity. But the city has already given some capacity to Miramar Theater.
Right.
So assuming that that project will proceed and open one day, and that will increase the parking occupancy ratio in that district, when we consider parking waiver and to make that finding, have we already considered Miramar Theater's parking demand?
So the Miramar wasn't considered as part of the parking study because it was the North Beach parking study because it was considering existing conditions. Because the maximum occupancy in that block was observed to be 50%, we believe it's still not going to have an impact even if the Miramar project was to be opened. And so occupancy is considerably low in North Beach, so not to exceed 50%, it's substantially low. Downtown area, we experience a peak occupancy of 68%, so there's still a lot of capacity in the North Beach area.
Okay, so you believe even after Miramar Theater opens, there should be still enough public parking available to absorb those?
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Blackwell?
Yes, thank you. Gabriel, there's a large ficus tree in the southwest corner of the property. It appears to be on the property. Do you know if that is on the property or not? It's right next to the trash enclosure that the applicant is proposing to redo.
Yeah, you can
Here's
see-
another slide where you can see it's the view from the other.
that building, right?
Part of it, yeah.
Yeah, interestingly enough, that planter is not part of the subject site.
It's not.
Right, so it's part of this, another lot that's depicted here, existing parking.
But the trash enclosure that's directly underneath it is part of this project?
There's two trash enclosures in the rear. One actually serves this property shown on the slide, and the second trash enclosure belongs to this retail building. That's the one that's going to be,
Redone?
yeah, remodeled and moved to a new location.
Okay, well, I answered that question. So can we talk about paint? How the building's going to be treated, and maybe the architect can speak to it later, but in terms of what staff knows, what can you share?
Let's see.
Specifically in the front, interested in the back too, because that's got, we're looking at all sides of the design here, but I'd like to know how the front's going to look.
Yeah, that one, if I could defer the paint color palette to the applicant or the architect.
Okay. And so One Queen Palm, so did the DRSC suggest a second tree? And what type of a tree and what location was that suggested to be placed? We've got a
We were
Queen
looking
Palm
at
there.
the south edge of the building on El Camino Real, where it currently shows the patio sticking out,
Okay.
and that's one of the conditions of approval.
So it'd be another like variety of palm, same kind of.
Is it reflected on this landscape plan that we're looking
No,
at? right
it is
now?
not.
So where would it be located?
Can
on
you
the
kind
site?
of maybe point to your screen?
When we discussed it at design review, it would be in the left-hand corner of the front patio, way over to the left, right over in that area, similar to how it's done on the other side of the building.
Okay.
And it would be bringing the patio in enough to accomplish that.
Kind of frame it.
Okay, so then they'll do some seating based on that?
Possibly one.
That's the reason why the applicant did not want to do that.
Yeah, so they would need to remove a big piece of concrete there to get a 24-inch box in. To do that, but not too bad. Okay, and so so we have another landscape consultant that we're using, other than Pat Murphy?
No, it's Pat Murphy that reviewed these plans.
Okay. And was there comments provided?
Comments I'm not aware of. I know that they were reviewed and considered acceptable for review by the Planning Commission.
So there is no reciprocal agreement to the parking to the south, and so there is no legal access. There's no accessibility for the rear to get inside the building other than going over somebody else's property.
Correct.
Around to the front,
Yeah.
or through the public right of way.
And the way the circulation occurs today is actually through the adjacent property, but the alternative is through the alley.
Base Hall hold the rest of my.
Okay, Commissioner Talley?
What are the outstanding amounts of the fines?
The amounts I'm not aware of. I would defer to our code compliance representative here, and if you'd like to speak. Beverly
Hi,
Thompson.
good evening. Beverly Thompson, Senior Code Compliance Officer. Approximately averaging around 27,000.
Okay. How has the applicant interacted with code compliance recently?
They've had several meetings. It's been a positive experience. Code Compliance has been working with the applicant to run the restaurant in compliance within the last 3 to 4 months, including stop using the heaters, retailing, bringing in the live entertainment, stopping that, capping it off at 23, which Gabriel's already stated for the occupancy. So they've been working jointly with us, and we have been facilitating this in order to get the business going, because when they first got approved, they were approved for 4 seats, a maximum of 10 occupancy for a restaurant. So we wanted to help them more in an economic development way.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, but they've been, you would characterize it as cooperative and collaborative and trying to
Very much
move
so.
forward?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, that's good to hear, thank
Yeah.
you. One of my other questions, if you can go back to the site plan. So where are deliveries going to occur for food and supplies?
My understanding with the applicant and observation is on site, it occurs in the rear. And then probably the applicant could speak to that if there's any proposed changes to deliveries.
So the reason I bring that up is I mean, I'm obviously in the food business, but deliveries are somewhat of an issue, especially if we're dealing with a tight parking structure that's here. So it seems that I go to Casano's all the time in the evening, and for some reason, they're getting food deliveries at like 5 o'clock at night. So they've got a semi-truck that's blocking like 4 or 5 parking spots. And so perhaps we should have, when we make some of these findings for the parking waivers, we're talking about non-peak hours, being able to utilize the additional 3 spots, but I would be somewhat concerned if during the peak hours of business operation, we could have deliveries that are coming in. Now, from a business standpoint, you probably don't want that to occur, but it seems like that's something that we need to, since we're dealing with tight parking here and waivers, that might be something that this commission might want to take a look at. If not on this project, certainly something in the future for you guys to take a look at for restaurants.
Okay.
Commissioner Brown?
Yeah, one question. Code and compliance, you mentioned briefly that they've been having live music here down there lately?
I'm sorry,
They've
what?
been having live music?
No, they've ceased it.
They had it?
Yes, so
Because there's no approval for that, there's none before us tonight, is that correct?
Correct, but when we received the code compliance case, that was a violation.
Correct, okay.
So they were having the live entertainment, so we worked with them to essentially establish a timeframe of compliance prior to the hearing, that they're operating in compliance, meaning they're not using the unpermitted heaters, they're reducing the seats, they're reducing the occupancy, and no live entertainment. And they've been able to hold that for a period of time.
Okay, thank you. And so the applicant's firmly aware of the fact going forward, there's no live entertainment approval in this approval, and that they are being held accountable for going forward, no more live entertainment, is that correct?
Correct, and this CUP would not allow that.
Okay, thank you. Now, looking at the 5-sided building thing, I'd like to bring up the rear of the building. I think you and I discussed this, and maybe the architect can address it, but the plans for the rear of the building is like 3 plots sitting there with some plants in it. And I brought to the planner's attention about a couple of years ago, we approved for Pep Boys up the alley, about 4 businesses, and they planted a climbing vine in the alley back there. It's very flourishing. I went down there and looked at it yesterday. And so maybe the applicant's architect could address that to maybe flesh out the rear of the building more where they park. And then, so I tread lightly into the plants with Commissioner Blackwell's expertise here, but I thought I'd bring up that one example. It's only about 4 buildings away, and maybe the architect could address that.
Commissioner Kozinski?
Gabriel, the applicant is asking to extend indoor and outdoor hours from 10 p.m. for indoors till extend it to 11 p.m. and outdoor from 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. Do we know if there are any noise complaints or any other complaints, maybe code compliance, other than the live music and the occupancy violations?
I'm not aware of the noise complaints, but maybe Beverly Thompson could speak to any noise complaints.
Besides the live entertainment, we haven't received any.
Nothing from...
No, we've been having staff monitor it on a weekend swing shift, and we haven't received any complaints thus far.
Thank you.
Commissioner Blackwell, did you have any additional
I
comments?
did, for Gabriel, thank you. I forgot to ask you about the, so staff went out, obviously worked on this project, took a close look at the parking lot in the back. What are your thoughts on the condition of the concrete, other than it's really dirty? And the parking stalls that are shown here proposed, are we anticipating that there will be some cleaning done and some repainting? I didn't see that in the staff report.
Yeah, that would need to be done. The back area, restriping the parking area we need to happen. Also with the replacement of the trash enclosure and relocation of the area. I don't think on this site plan it indicates if there will be new slurry seal, because it is asphalt back there. Concrete. But the applicant can also mention if there's any plans to do that. It is paved currently, but they plan to improve that condition. It's not identified in the plans.
Okay, thank you.
That's all I have. Very good. Would the applicant or the applicant's representative like to speak? Or both?
Good evening. My name is Harold Alzate. I'm the co-owner of La Colombiana with my mom. Mom is present. I'd like to thank the commissioners for dedicating their time and always improving San Clemente. I'd like to thank the city staff for supporting that vision. I'd like to thank Adamon and Beverly. They've worked with us and to get through the code compliance so we could keep open and serving San Clemente. And again, I'd like to thank all the locals and all our customers for coming into La Colombiana, supporting us, and embracing us and let us be part of North Beach. And they've also become part of La Colombiana family. And I've said before that I started this back in 2014 from my mom. I started as a small restaurant, something to keep her busy, something she would enjoy doing, and it's become much more than that. It was just well received into North Beach, and it's become almost iconic to North Beach. People know La Colombiana, they know North Beach, they know La Colombiana. So, we've done the best we can to just provide great food, great atmosphere, a great ambiance, part of just improving quality of life. So that's what I'm looking for here. My vision is to make the restaurant a permanent fixture in North Beach for my family and for the residents of North Beach. I'm also looking to help it to improve the quality of life here in San Clemente while we're offering great food, great ambience, a nice family atmosphere. And in the future, I'm hoping to get live music, live entertainment, to also add that as an added improvement, and just to serve the people of San Clemente. Then on a couple other notes that we were talking about, questions you were asking about deliveries. Most of our deliveries come in the morning, and we self-deliver a lot of our food. We have a truck, and we go out to Restaurant Depot and buy everything to keep costs down and just to control the quality of our food. The parking access, the building has 2 accesses in the rear. So if someone does park in the building, they can access the rear and come through the building. They don't have to necessarily walk around. On the rear eyebrow, we talked about the Design Review Board Subcommittee, and at that time, we talked about the front eyebrow and the rear eyebrow, and this was with Veronica, and we had decided that we were going to just enforce removing the front eyebrow. And part of the reason of that is that I have a very difficult landlord. I've been fighting with her for years. When we first opened the restaurant, the first week we opened, she threatened to sue me. She sued me while I was in the entitlement process for the first phase, so she's not very friendly. So any of these little things came up. I got a nasty email from her the other day because she got the letter for the meeting tonight, and she said, what are you talking about, minor front modifications? I never approved that, and I had sent her the plans and discussed it with her. So it's always, a battle with her. And then the comments about the plants. We also talked this at DRSC about doing the vines similar to Pep Boys. Well, the problem is we're a restaurant, and with a vine system like that, it would be an avenue for rodents to climb up and get into the building. That's why we came with up with the idea of just adding the pots at various places. Thank you very much, and I'll pass it over to Mike Luna.
Question for you.
Yes.
Go ahead, Mike.
If I may. Yes, thank you. So welcome back, by the way. It's good to see you again.
Thank you.
Remember you're here I guess a couple of years now, right?
Yeah.
So you did not end up acquiring the building? You're still...
We're in escrow.
Okay.
And I just finished the development. As soon as that sells, we're probably going to purchase the building. We're in escrow. I had a 2-year escrow. We're in escrow until October. So as soon as that happens, I'll have the funds, and I'm going to start that. And then that'll be once we do that, we acquire the building, then I'll come back and we'll look at expanding into the third space and see how we work parking and everything else, and do some more improvements on the building at that time.
Okay. Did you have a chance to review the full staff report, including all the conditions of approval, specifically the DRSC recommendation that was mentioned in the report to remove part of your patio and add another tree?
I missed that because I did read them, but I did not see anything in the condition of approvals that I had about adding another tree.
How about the DRC's recommendation? The Design Review Subcommittee made a recommendation to create some more landscape areas so that it could accommodate another tree for some balance in the front.
Well, right now we have the existing tree to the right, and then we're proposing putting another tree to the farthest north corner. And then there's on the south corner, there's a planter area there. There's the front planter, and then there's a planter area that returns. It's a couple feet wide, and I thought that was satisfactory at the time. If it was additional landscape, no, I missed that.
Okay, would you be open to that idea if the commission was to have a discussion about it and we felt strongly about the DRSC's recommendation to place a tree in the it'd be the southeast corner where there's currently a small sliver of a planter, but mostly hardscape used for seeding. Part of that may need to be removed to accommodate a 24-inch box tree to match the other one that's proposed.
When we looked at this before, we were talking, the way we were designing this, we're putting up the trellis, we were talking about putting some kind of vines or something to grow up the trellis, something to give it more green. I would prefer not to do that because we could lose seeding there. At the end of the day, we do have, we're popular, and we do have to, make a good, return on the property. So losing the seeds could just, adversely affect us. So I said, we threw up, other ideas, just putting vines, and we have a nice, is about 50-foot planter in the front. We had the additional tree to the north, and then the pots in the back. Also, because it sits right next to we're a zero property line. There's a lot of landscaping that we maintain. As part of it, we use that parking, but we maintain all the landscaping. So it also gives us a lot of green there.
So you maintain the planter that's on the south side of the building that runs from El Camino Real to the alley?
Yes, we maintain that.
How long have you been doing that? Is the other property owner aware of it?
The other property owner, he just really didn't do much and was just overgrowing all the time. We maintain that, and we maintain also the little planter area in the center. Where we're always cutting that back, and we want we just like everything to look really nice and good appearance. We don't want it to look run down. So
So you've been maintaining that parking, that planter area ever since you opened?
Ever since we opened,
How many
yes.
years has that been?
5 years now,
So 5 years you've been maintaining that?
yes.
Okay, and the other property owners aware that you're
Yes.
maintaining that? Okay. Okay, and so that's all I have, questions I have for the applicant.
Commissioner Brown?
Yeah, I'm seeing you're finally trying to expand here, and it's been a long journey.
Yes.
You have dreams of going further. Would you be amenable, if you do buy the building, the rest of the building, and expand further, then at a later date consider some of these situations that have been brought up by the other tree and all that in Phase 2?
Absolutely. I would like to do that, because if we buy the building, the way the building is set up, it's a very narrow building, so I have my parking, and I have another 20 feet between my parking and the building. So I can always expand that way, in the kitchen, and make better use of the building, allowing me for a little more landscape area and more outdoor seating in the front, and it's kind of my thinking for the future.
See, the mantra we approach here, and DRC uses the five-sided building effect. That's why we have you screen things on the roof. That's why the back looks pretty bare. And so, and then we kind of take a look at your past reputation since the last time you saw us here in these fines. And so going forward, you're going to be under a microscope of how you operate.
Yeah, I understand that.
Understand that clearly?
Yes.
And so, very particularly as we go forward, and you expand or come back to us with your expansion, we're going to take a look at your operation, and then we're going to kind of mold things in the future going forward. So going forward here, you need to be inside the box and stay there.
Yeah, and Adam and I have discussed this many times, and he's also made that clear. He said, Harold, I'm working with you, but you have to understand, from here on, you have to be compliant. Otherwise, you could lose your conditional use permit in any future.
You could probably have a higher level of standard applied to you because of your past actions than most. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Wu?
Yes, question about your trash. I drove by the alley today. I saw 6 trash bins, 3 in the trash enclosure, the existing one, 2 right next to the trash enclosure, but on the alley, and another one at your rear door. Are they all yours?
No, I think we only have 3. Excuse me a second. Mom, do you know if we have 3 or 4 trash cans? Do you know?
We had 2 black ones and 3 browns.
And 3? Oh, so we have 5?
Yeah.
Okay, then we have 5 trash cans.
You have 5 trash cans, and that's based on your current operation.
Yeah, and the problem is currently the trash enclosure is a little bit small. So with the new plan, we're relocating the trash enclosure and making it larger to accommodate all our trash cans. So they'll always be behind the trash enclosure.
So is the proposed trash enclosure bigger than the existing one? Look.
Yes, it is. It's roughly 5 by 8.
Have you implemented the organic food waste diversion program per city requirement?
I think that came up before, and we didn't. That didn't apply, and I'm really not that familiar with the program.
Well, that's a state requirement that it's already in effect. The city is going to actively enforcing those ones. So conceivably, you're going to add one more trash bin for that food waste. How often do you get the trash truck come over your property?
Right now, it comes once a week.
Once a week?
Well, once a week. And quite honestly, the trash we put out, the majority of his boxes, we're trying to get someone, a recycle company, to come back and pick up the cardboard. With that, then, I mean, with the 6 trash or 5 trash cans, it's more than enough. But like I said, with the larger trash enclosure, we're going to have ample room to add more trash cans if we need it. Or we'll get the trash bins, the dumpsters that they bring out.
Well, you cannot put a dumpster there because that proposed location is on a slope. How do we move that to the alley?
Well, planning did have a call into CCNR, and they talked about that, so Veronica did, and they discussed that issue before they located there in CCNR, so they would not have any problems with the garbage at all.
Is it possible for you to get more service from CRNR?
If we need to, we can always call them and arrange it to have pickups twice a week. We start, now that we're expanding, we start generating more trash, absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, see no more questions. Would your architect like to step up, and if there are any questions?
Thank you very
And
much.
while you're walking up here, Mal, what happens if we have conditional use permits go with the land? This is not the property owner. And we do conditions of approval that at some point the landlord doesn't choose to approve. Does it come back here? Is that handled by staff? How would that be handled?
Is the question if the operator ceases operations?
No. If we say here and he agrees to the conditions of approval, those are put on the land, but the landlord doesn't. Does that make it?
Yes, that is a step. That is a step that the applicant would have to take with his landlord to get her acquiescence to the conditions of approval, because in the end, that's the owner of the property. So conditions that would affect the actual property would have to be approved by the property owner as well.
Thank you. Mr. Luna.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, city staff, my name is Michael Luna. I'm an architect in San Clemente, but I want to point out that I am not the architect of record for this project. I have assisted Mr. Alzate in a few design aspects and kitchen planning aspects for his restaurant use, but I did want to comment tonight and encourage you please to support this project. My office is in North Beach, San Clemente. I see North Beach every day. I look out my window and I look for hopeful, and I become hopeful of positive change and excitement and the charging of North Beach. And Mr. Alzate has very interesting, I think his story started off with a 10-seat restaurant. Before he knew it, he had a line out the door. Evidently, I know his mom. I've eaten there. His mom is a very exceptional cook, and these recipes have become so popular, there's a line out the door almost from the time they opened. But I would ask you also, do you remember what this building looked like before he came in? Do you remember the Sunrise Cafe? And then how many years this building sat vacant? And it was really a lot of plight, I think, this building represented in North Beach. Harold had a leap of faith to come in and open his operation, and has worked hard to try to maintain the level of service that the lines out the door created. And now he can see that with the success that he's had, that he's become a really strong integral part of North Beach. He wishes to expand. He's trying to meet every development criteria that has been asked of him. He's trying to bring his project into conformance. His plans that he has before you and his conditions of approval that are before you represent that. His willingness to do things right at this location and support the very strong need. Hopefully he will be able to purchase the building. He can be able to address even further issues with the building. And this project is also a great step to bring the project into the architectural goals of North Beach in terms of the Spanish architecture that is required here. So I see a lot of very positive aspects with this. Unfortunately, because of these site constraints, these existing conditions, waivers become necessary to make things viable in North Beach. North Beach is a full pattern of projects that are existing buildings and uses that are underparked. So hopefully you'll look positively upon the need for waivers in the North Beach area, not only for this project and others, but so that's all I have. And I hope that you can see fit to support his application.
Thank you very much, Michael. And I would say for anybody who wants to ask him a question, not being the architect of record, he can't make or is limited in what he can respond to. So.
His names are on the drawings.
Well, I do have a question for Michael and/or the applicant regarding the painting of the building. We asked staff about it, and staff deferred to y'all there. respond to that. Can you talk about what you're going to do to the building? Paint color, treatment on the front and the back?
I believe the front facade, that's all going to get new stucco, and that's white. I think that's the color that they designed, and it has the, I don't remember if it's a foam trim or a tile trim on top of the facade that wraps around the building. So it is pretty much going to stay about the same color, white, what it is now. It's just instead of having the brick look from the outside, the masonry block, it's going to be wrapped with stucco, so it has more of a Spanish colonial smooth Santa Barbara finish on it.
Okay. And the window trim and the other trim on the building will remain that kind of a rust brown color?
Yes.
How about on the back?
The back, I really haven't thought about it. I mean, we can paint it, we just paint it white, so everything looks clean and new.
Anything on the side of the building that's exposed to be the south side of the building? Is there any discussion about cleaning it up, repainting?
Well, I think that the south side of the building, if I recall correctly, that the stucco wraps around the south side. I believe it does. I'm not 100%, but I think I'm 99% sure. I think the stucco wraps around the south side.
Gabriel, do we have any pictures of that side of the building?
Yeah. South side facing the alley?
Yes. Actual photos?
Yeah. So this is the elevation here.
Drawings call for pure white.
All the way around. So it would be that face right there that's currently. Yeah, we have some photographs. We have photographs, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's currently just a masonry block.
So the south side, I'm talking about that would be the west side, so the side that's facing the parking lot. There you
This
go.
one?
You can kind of see part of it there. So that'll all remain the same, it's just going to wrap around the same color.
Well, that's stucco. Right now, it's just masonry block painted white, and the stucco wraps around that side.
So you're planning to coat that with stucco?
Yes.
And paint it? Okay. Can you maintain that planter right there that's shown in the picture to the right?
Yes, we do.
They do, but I don't believe it's part of the property.
No.
So,
Okay.
Property is?
the adjacent parking lots.
And the property owner did not review the conditions of approval or the staff report, to your knowledge?
No, she has, not to my knowledge. I know she received the notice of the meeting, and I said, I got an email back, and she was asking about the minor alterations to the building, so I'm not sure. I don't think that was in the notice, so maybe she did read them.
Gabriel, did the applicant provide an authorization letter from the property owner to submit this application?
Yes, they usually sign the application.
But
So-
did they?
Yeah, I believe so. That's a requirement
Yeah, I
that
would
we
assume
check
so.
when they come in.
So if we would understand the property owner was aware of the activity at least, that there would be an application moving forward for review for modifications to the building.
Yes, because when we started the project, and that's been 3 years, but when we did start this, we had submitted an affidavit from her that was notarized, saying that she was aware of this and she agreed to it.
Okay,
That's all I have, thank you.
very good. We will open it up for
Thank you.
public. We'll close the presentation, open it up for public comment. I do not have any cards for this. Let's open it up for discussion, and I will make a comment that our Eagle Scout here will have his opportunity to make his presentation as soon as this is completed. Well, no, in a few minutes. Okay, so let's open it up for discussion. Commissioner Talley.
I'm generally supportive of the economic development that's being done down there in North Beach. Obviously, I'm somewhat concerned about the code compliance issues that we've had in the past, but I applaud you for working constructively with code compliance. Candidly, having code compliance come here and vouch for that is very persuasive in my book, so thank you. I've been involved in some hearings where code compliance was not able to do that, and so that goes a long way in my book. Eichel, you live and breathe down there in North Beach, so your statements about, what this does to the area down there, again, is persuasive for me. So, you have a business down there and you see this, and so I think this is an area that we want to spend some time and energy and maybe take a little bit more of a leap of faith than we would in some other places. That was what we discussed at our study session on the parking waivers. In fact, I think the comment came up, since we're discussing parking waivers here, that in North Beach, being able to do something that was serving to the community, that met some of the needs that we had, and was able to make that area more beautiful is probably not the proper word to use there, but here we're dealing with some renovations of the building and taking concrete blocks and making them into smooth stucco. That to me is when we should be utilizing parking waivers to make it economically justifiable to make those investments in the building. So again, I'm supportive of it. I would like to reiterate what Commissioner Brown said, and I think was echoed on this board, which is you are going to be under a microscope for code compliance. If this passes tonight, you've been given a chance to demonstrate that you're able to operate within the confines of the code that the city has, and I'd urge you to take that very seriously and to make sure that you do that, because we want to see your business be successful, and we don't want to have to go through the process that's required for businesses that aren't in compliance, especially a restaurant with good food. So.
Very good. I'm going to jump in real quick and make some comments, because I want all of you to respond to them. Right now, they're asking for 3 parking waivers. They really only need 9.6 stalls for the building, and it's rounded up to 10, which requires 3 waivers. If we should choose to put in the adjacent tree, can you go to the floor plan real quickly? There, right there. You can see on the far left the handicap single table with 3 seats at it. If you take the 1 chair away from the left side of that table, bring the planter over, bring the wood post over, just the same as on the right-hand side. We have enough room for the trees. It drops 1 seat, which puts them at needing 9.4 parking spaces, which would be rounded down to 9, and it would only require 2 exceptions for parking, which I think is a little more palatable than, for me anyway, if that can work. We've talked about I'm concerned that we're going to get into a point where we make requirements and the landlord may or may not agree with the changes to the building, which is going to drag this thing out a little bit. But so we want to be a little careful about what we require, because the CUP goes with the land whether this is the operator or not, and we got to always realize that. Deliveries is an issue, and I think there probably should be something in the conditions of approval that they will occur at a time that doesn't involve the high traffic times of the day or blocking parking. I would suspect they probably come normally onto the adjacent parking lot and probably get a dolly out and deliver them from there rather than the alley. But either way, I think we need to consider and discuss the delivery issues. Make sure they're aware that no signage is being done, and I'm going to assume it could be done ministerially at the counter as long as no exceptions are requested. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, very good. So those are my major looks at it. This is a minor remodel. This isn't considered a major one. We don't really have a good handle on what a major remodel is and what a minor remodel is. So, I mean, it would be very easy to make it into a major one, but we're trying to keep it minor, so I would like to try to get staff to get the eyebrow on the rear removed. But I can see that if we require it and the landlord says no, it might put the project in jeopardy by having to come back here, I would assume. So if we say no, but give the direction to staff to do the best they can to get it out, might be a little more realistic in getting the project done. So those are my current comments, and respond to them if you want or not.
Yeah, I'm torn. I want to support the project. The applicant's track record is not all that pristine. I understand he's very popular down there, and I see the crowds. And so I have concerns going forward. I'm willing to plant this seed, like I mentioned before, of, ask the city attorney this question of kind of trading space for time. In other words, if he acquires the whole building and the rest of the building and he expands, then it comes back to the Planning Commission, rather than some administrative hearing, or a zoning administrator, as we see it go forward. In other words, not particularly require the tree now over there so he loses one access spot, but maybe he agrees that it'll be required later when he acquires the whole building and it can expand it. I'm not sure if that's the appropriate way to go. In other words, and in condition that his next expansion is not a zoning administrator call, but it comes back to this body for the architectural, and at that time when he's the owner, then, okay, you're the owner, now remove the brow. And be upfront and knows that's what's coming. And so I'd like to enter into a discussion with you and the other commissioners. If you say remove the brow now and the current owner says no, then this whole project stalls again like he was before us 2 years ago or 3 years ago. And so we craft language or conditions of the second phase. If he acquires the building and expands, then some of these other things he knows he's going to be held accountable for. The tree, loss of park, because he's going to expand when he gets the other business there at the porch, so he gets more tables there. So there where Mr. Blackwell's beloved tree comes in at a later date. And then, the same token, we put this applicant, just like we saw earlier on our consent calendar tonight, on JD's, the 6-month and 1-year review, as he goes forward with his expansion, gets into business, acquires, and really keep him under a microscope how he's doing. I'd like to throw that concept out for commission discussion, and the assistant city attorney weighed in if I'm off base here legally.
I think to expand on that, we can use that in our decision-making. I'm concerned that we've got a lot of space there in the vacant thing. It's 5 seats per parking stall. That entire space would only be able to increase it by 15 seats total and meet the parking requirement, even with the waivers. So I don't know if it's practical or not. So I don't think we can put a link to it in our decision tonight, what might happen in the future. But we can certainly review the project again, like we did with JD's and the operation of it.
I want staff to clearly know that when he comes back to expand, it's not necessarily a zoning administrator action. This is a specific case that we want to look at if he comes back and he expands.
Mal, do you have any response to somehow linking that? I don't know.
There's no issue with imposing a condition of approval. that ties the expansion, any expansion of this business, back to the Planning Commission. You can certainly condition that. So if he were to expand this in any way with additional seating, blowing into the other space, you could require that it come back for approval to the Planning Commission. There's no problem with that.
Similar with light noise, too.
Okay.
Now, I have a question.
Commissioner Kozinski.
In line with that, if he does expand, wouldn't he normally have to come back to the Planning Commission to amend the CUP?
If the applicant proposes to add seats.
So if he's adding seats and expanding, he has to come back here? Yeah.
Do you want to continue with any questions?
I'm mostly supportive of this. I think he's done a great job adding the stucco to the brick, really uplifting the face of the building. And I commend the applicant for really doing a good job with this restaurant. Thank you.
Commissioner Wu.
I've been to the restaurant a few times. I like the food. I like the atmosphere. So I'm glad to see you're able to buy the property and expand your business. Regarding this application, I do have a few comments I'd like to make. First of all, the trash enclosure. A proposed trash enclosure seems to be big enough to accommodate about 4 trash bins, and they currently have 5. And they're going to double their operation. Even if they can get a CR and auto come over and to retrieve the trash twice a week, that still seems to be on the small side. So I have little concern over that because I don't want to see, preferably, I like to see some improvement to the alley, but at least they shouldn't be allowed to put the trash bin outside of the trash enclosure during normal business day. So I like to see the staff to work with the applicant to expand the trash enclosure to accommodate the trash bins they use. Currently, the 5. I know city has a food waste diversion program that would at least require 1 more trash bin. So the proposed trash enclosure is just slightly narrower than if you were to put 3 trash bins next to each other. That would be too tight. But if they can make it a little wider, and then you can have 2 tiers, so like a tandem parking thing. So that would be able to accommodate, they would be able to squeeze in 6 trash bins. It looks like it can be, a small modification can be made to the trash enclosure to make sure it's big enough. So that's one. And also, on regarding the parking waiver, conceivably, once the applicant got control of the whole building, he would want to lease out the currently vacant space. And by that time, the condition for parking waiver B would be gone. So I'm not sure if we can, unless the space stays vacant. Otherwise, it's almost like you have the cake and eat it too, because those 3 spaces currently are not used by the vacant space can be expected reasonably to be used by that retail space in the future. So, but in general, I'm not against a parking waiver in North Beach area. I can support 3. I can support even more. 4. If we're allowed to support up to 5, I can support 5 waivers. But I cannot support the lack of accessibility of this this site design. There's no accessible parking there. There's no accessible path of travel. Although there's a note on the drawing, but they don't exist on the design. People can get into this space from the back door. If you look at the building to the top right corner, there is a door, and that's how people can come in from the parking lot. Because currently the parking lot in between the coffee shop and this business could be developed in the future with 0 setback, so people will lose the access. So that will be the way people come into the business from the parking lot, without accessible parking, accessible parking and accessible route is a issue greater than building code compliance. It's a civil rights issue, and I cannot support lack of accessibility on the site design. And so I'd like to propose that we add a condition to make that for the applicant to provide accessible parking along with accessible path of travel to the rear door.
Just a quick legal question on accessibility, because Commissioner Wu brings up an interesting point. How does the, what is it, the 2012 ADA law require accessibility here? I mean, what's our obligation?
These are really questions for the building official, but these applications are always reviewed by the building official for compliance with the building code. So the assumption that I would have, that's really a question I think for Gabriel, because he's worked with the building official, is that this is fully compliant with the ADA. It wouldn't be before you if it wasn't, and it certainly couldn't be permitted without compliance with the building code, which would include ADA compliance.
And just to add on to that, plans for this expansion are currently in plan check right now, so the applicant did that at risk. So the building official does have to check for ADA compliance. In the recent review with the building official determined that there is no path of travel, there is no way to accommodate that with existing parking. The only way to prove this is if he deems this technically infeasible to do so.
Like with a van accessible parking spot?
Well, I'm not even sure the front door ramp is accessible with the slopes and the fact there isn't a landing area that's flat in front of it. So we've done it before where we say, as a condition of approval, it shall meet the ADA standards, not necessarily ADA standards, some standard, if that would satisfy you.
Well,
I don't think we can require beyond meeting that standard.
No, well, if we put that in writing, it certainly helps. But to answer Commissioner Talley's question, the test used by Department of Justice on accessibility is readily achievable. If the barrier to the accessibility can be achieved, is readily achievable, then it should be done. So with that site, there's a little slope on the side, but all the applicant needs to do is to grade that parking spot, the accessible parking, not the other ones, grade it and put a ramp leading from that space to the back door, which they have ample space to do. Of course, it will involve with some cost, and that's also a consideration, but given the extent of this improvement to the interior as well as the exterior, I don't think it's going to be substantial enough to prevent us to see.
Some of our restaurants have been, we've battled that, and when we do remodels, I think the general rule of thumb is that somewhere around 10% of the remodel has to be, you have to spend that to bring the structure into compliance or to the best of your ability. So, again, I defer to the building.
Yeah, building and plan check, we'll check that. It'll take at least.
If it's not compliant, there'll be somebody that'll find out and they'll sue it. Yeah, I mean, those lawsuits are rampant right now.
And I would guess at the rear of this building,
this will not
be 42 foot of ramp in the back. I mean, it's a good 3.5, 4 feet.
The coffee shop next door has accessible parking, and the liquor store further down to the south has accessible parking.
Yeah, and a flat lot a mile away can meet it, but this is a sloping lot. We have to handle this one on a standalone basis. And it's going to be a 36 to 40 foot long ramp to get up to the back door, which is fine.
Yeah, well,
and that's up to the building department to determine.
Right. In my viewpoint, yeah, it's a slope, but it's minimally sloped. It's not steep.
Commissioner, or Chairman?
Commissioner Talley.
Following up on Commissioner Wu's comments, what is the code compliancy for trash cans that are left not enclosed in a commercial building? Are those allowed to be done? I thought they had to be shielded.
The screening is a requirement. That's handled by environmental.
Okay.
services, but I know that is a certain thing that they do address, the screening, yes.
So that's a code compliancy issue that would be checked on this property going forward.
I think the plans actually get routed through engineering, and they might get routed to CR&R.
Well, I'm more the practical application of it, like 6 months from now, making sure that trash cans aren't, that they are in fact screened. That's a code compliancy issue.
It's handled by environmental services, but there can also be a condition drafted to that.
Maybe that would.
Commissioner Blackwell.
Yes, thank you. Well, I'm very happy to see the applicant back and to see the business is doing well. Again, when, good things happen with land use, right? It's a business that has become very popular in town, and, obviously this applicant has faith in what they're doing and has made great efforts to improve the situation there architecturally. We're going to see some nice improvements to the property. A couple of concerns I had about the project. Landscape I felt was a little deficient. I agree with DRSC's recommendation to add another tree, a specimen tree in the front. This is a special location along El Camino Real, and I think that all efforts should be made within reason to really enhance the front of the use to the greatest extent possible. Commissioner Crandall's suggestion to lose the one seat, I think, is a great idea. Reducing the parking waiver request down to 2, I think it lessens the burden on us and other uses in the area. So I definitely would support that condition to modify that portion of the property to accommodate a tree and possibly lose that seat to do so. The parking in the back is it's a bit of an eyesore, and I think since we're here, the time to really act on this and really get the most out of this whole process is to do it now and not hang our hat on the potential for an acquisition of this property, because that's just an uncertainty. And so we have an opportunity now. I think it's reasonable to ask the applicant to clean that parking lot up, at least with a professional high-pressure washer and a restripe rather than a slurry seal. The condition of the concrete, it didn't look too bad to me. I went out and walked the site. I think it's still usable. But again, that would be a building official determination as to whether or not it's in proper health and can be maintained that way. But I just think it should be cleaned up. So I'd like to add that as a condition of approval, or suggested if the commission would be open to that. One of the biggest concerns I have is that and it was stated into the record that the property owner was not comfortable with some of the design changes and not necessarily on board with this project in general 100%. The landlord may have signed the application, but the conditions of approval occur after the fact, after the application is signed. I'm a little bit concerned that there's enough aesthetic treatment here and changes to the property that the property owner may not be on board with. And if that occurs, if any portion of the design that's being proposed now is not supported by the property owner changed, that changes the character of the project, and I'd like to see that come back here, if there's any change to it at all. Significant change, like, for example, the trellis in the front, the specimen trees, the painting, the stucco on the building. These are all small components, but together make up the entire package and the aesthetic, quality and flavor of the look of this building along El Camino Real. So removing any one of those major details changes the character of the project altogether. So, and to Commissioner Brown's point about seeing this, I'm on board with that too if we can. I know we can't do it as a condition of acquisition. At least I don't believe we can. Is that correct? It'd be odd. So,
a legal term?
But thank you. It's enough. It's enough for me. So, to anticipate that there would be expansion given the parking condition, it's a possibility. It would be a good opportunity. I'd like that condition to remain if, in fact, there was an expansion of this use into that retail space. I don't know that that's necessarily going to happen anytime soon, but it could. But at least now we have an opportunity to address what we have here and really to get the best project possible. I understand the building official will be reviewing this for compliance, but a ramp and a door access all are things that we should be concerned about, because these are things that affect the aesthetic of that side of the architecture. What's that door going to look like? You know, suddenly our focus is going to be on a new entrance. It's almost as important as the front entrance now. What's it going to look like? How's it going to relate to the rest of the architecture? I really think this project needed a little bit more work before it came to us. That's my personal opinion. I can make the findings here, but I think there's just some big questions that have not been answered yet that could be really detrimental to this project. And I think that those questions should have been answered before they came here. Again, the landscape plan did not go before. We didn't get recommendations back from the landscape architect. Maybe a preliminary review was done, but in my opinion, it's somewhat hodgepodge. You know, you've got some agaves on the left that have a completely different architectural look, if you will, for landscape. But that's on the frontage at the southeast corner. But those don't occur anywhere else in the project, nowhere else. And there's a huge landscape area to the north, and nothing's happening on the ground there. It's all in the front. You got the bamboo that's lined up, as you can see there, the Nandina. There's a whole line of them across where the seating is proposed, but nothing in the dirt space that's in front of the future retail, except for the new green palm. So there's a huge imbalance there. There's no continuity, no flow. It's incomplete, and it's really going to have it could be a problem later on, especially when a new use comes in. Maybe they have a completely different landscape plan. So maybe we have them just tie in at that point. A lot of maybes here. This is the time to talk about it. This entitlement will run with the land, and I think we should really be looking at the entire piece of land here. I think it's a little bit early. I would like to see this come back again.
When you say,
Or at least talk about
this
it.
is a TI, this is a tenant improvements. So trying to look at the whole building for a single tenant improvement is probably a tough nexus to make, to say they got to do the entire building, particularly when it's not the property owner that's making the application, it's the tenant.
I don't know.
I can make that connection because the front facade is being redesigned for 2/3 of the front facade, and for the rear facade, once the eyebrow is removed, that affects almost half of the rear elevation. So it is a relatively significant change to the building.
Okay, remember things like Selma's and whatnot, we do just the face of the restaurant that's being done, but anyway, okay. Commissioner Brown?
Yeah, one more comment. I'd just like to agree with Commissioner Wu on the parking waiver issue there. I think that when we did the parking waivers a couple years ago for the Miramar, for the casino, we modeled, for the Miramar, the staff analyzed when all three of those major properties happened to have an operation going at the same time, and that's what the waivers were driven by down in that section down there. For both the Miramar, the Beach Club, and the casino. And so then we still found up at this end that there was available parking. And so we kind of forget that if the Miramar takes off, the waivers there were all modeled with that extreme stress test in mind, that the casino, the Beach Club, and the Miramar were all holding events concurrently and would all work, particularly down at that end. So that's where I come from as far as being comfortable with, like Commissioner Wu said, that the parking waivers to me are not that critical. I think we could support it up at that end of the North Beach area. But I do agree with some of the concerns about trash enclosures. Where we're at here, it's a tough project in a way, because in a way it's a facade change, in a way that it's a tenant improvement. He's trying to build it, but there's a lot of variables involved here. I could share Commissioner Blackwell's concern, and particularly the applicant's past history, but I'd still like to see this project go forward, and we just condition it with oversight going forward that he does pull it off, and if he does expand, then we really bring it into more compliance, or more into the architectural overlay. Thank you.
Okay, very good. I will say one thing about the parking waivers. I was trying to do the applicant actually a favor by saying if we drop one seat, it can be rounded down to 9 and only 2 waivers. And if he goes into the additional space, he can pick up 5 seats for 1 waiver versus 1. So,
It's good math.
so that's that. So where we're at, I think if someone wants to make a motion that, one, we're going to need probably a condition of approval that the trash enclosure be adequate to screen all, no more presentations by the applicant at this point.
I have an email from Jack Holden. He sent it to me today. I think it's kind of relevant to this. And the,
Is that the owner of the property?
no, that's the building official. He sent it to me at 4:36 and he copied Gabriel on it. He addresses the ADA parking in the rear and gives his opinion on that. Read it real quick. So I would like to read that, if I may.
Well, okay, go ahead.
Oh, Gabriel, can you read it? City planner, can you read it?
This is basically what
No,
he
he can read
says.
it.
He says, Harold, thank you. And he says you don't need an ADA parking space because it is technically infeasible. That's,
He's the one who makes the final call. I'd probably disagree with that a little bit, but as an architect, I've disagreed with building officials a lot.
I could read the whole thing for you, but that's just the main statement. He addressed that, and he's already studied it, and he shared that with me. Him and
Okay.
I have been going
You
back
agree with that,
and forth.
Gabriel?
Yeah, I'm trying to go.
Very good.
He said that at 4:36.
Thank you very much.
And the last thing, I would, I can relocate the seat. I really don't want to lose the parking waiver. I would like to still have the 3 parking waivers.
Gabriel, can you put that email on the screen so we can look at it?
Thank you.
I don't know how to do that. I don't know if there's a way to do that technically on the screen. Is there a way to do that?
What are you looking for?
You might have to pull up your emails on the computer.
I don't think we need to go through that. We've got, the building official says this, it's still going to have to comply even if it's challenged as far as the AD access.
Plaintiff's lawyer will determine.
You've got that right, absolutely right.
I don't want to be in the business of us determining what's technically feasible or not for ADA compliance.
Right, I would agree with that.
But the email does say that the building permit is still under review, so it's not signed off yet, and so that still needs to happen. And
Very good.
that doesn't happen until a planning commission approves the CUP.
And I will say that the courts look at it extremely carefully. When somebody files a claim that I can't get into that restaurant and have the wonderful food they've got, you open yourself up. But anyway, we want to do a condition that the trash enclosures are adequate to screen all trash cans. We haven't set it, is there a condition that this will be reviewed in 6 months and a year, or a year for operations? Like we did on JD's?
I don't recall seeing that. Let me check for you.
Okay. The current conditions of approval include the removal of the eyebrow and include the tree. So if we didn't get any specific objections to the conditions of approval that staff recommended. So by default, those would stay in unless someone wants to take them out.
I'll remove the eyebrow.
Okay.
And then the other one, I've got it.
And then probably a condition that some repair be performed on the parking area and surface when the restriping is done for the parking.
Also, if I may,
Go ahead.
Chairman Crandall, if we could just also ask that staff work with the landscape consulting landscape architect.
We can do that as a direction rather than a condition.
Right. Just to add some more continuity to the landscape plan, to spread it out a little bit so there's balance.
Any recommendations or requirements on landscape type or anything?
Just, the palette they have is very minimal, but just to spread it out a little, get some agaves, just, some balance. It's really just on one side. So the landscape architect would see that right away, and that's like a 101 issue right there. Just to,
But we're somewhat limited because we can't deal with the other third.
we can, I believe we
TI.
can, because it's, well, get it from legal. This is the entire property we're talking about, whether it's a TI or not. The whole project, the whole property is.
But it's a minor
It's a conditional use permit.
conditional use permit,
It's
or a minor remodel, minor architectural permit. So,
We can still,
I know, but we have to make the determination if it's excessive or not. And
just asking.
they're really only changing, I mean, he's going into one additional space. And it appears that if the owner was the applicant, I'd say, yeah, it's your building, you're improving the whole thing. But putting the onus on a tenant seems pretty excessive, too.
Well, they're already touching that part of the landscaping by putting a new tree in.
That was required by design review, but not, they'd just as happily not have it.
Commissioner Blackwell, if you intend to support the basic motion, I think any of them can make an amendment to the motion. City Attorney, is that right? And that amendment will be voted before the basic one.
So,
Let me make a motion to adopt resolution number PC 19005, a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of San Clemente, California, approving conditional use permit 17-322, minor cultural heritage permit 17-420, minor exception permit 18628 La Columbia, restaurant expansion, a request to allow expansion of the existing restaurant use to include full alcohol service for on-site consumption indoors and outdoors, minor exterior modifications, and waivers of 3 parking spaces located at 1640 North El Camino Real, with the following conditions. New condition number 1 is that any additional expansion or remodel of this building shall be subject to the purview of the Planning Commission and not its delegated bodies. Condition number 2, that was one that we discussed earlier that Bart forgot to bring up. Condition number 2 is that the trash enclosure is modified so that it can properly screen the trash cans that are in use today and
any future.
And any future trash cans that are in use. I would also add condition 3 that the applicant maintains the trash cans in a screened enclosure at all times so that that can be looked upon by code compliance. Condition number 4 was, or I'm sorry, the removal of the eyebrow requirement on the back of the removal of the eyebrow on the back of the building. And what was the other one?
Driveway repair?
Oh, yes, that the parking lot be at a minimum restriped and possibly slurry sealed.
Okay, do we have any amendments?
Well, no, you got to second that, and then.
Do we second?
I was,
Do we have a second on that motion? Second by Kozinski, motion by Talley.
I'd like to amend the motion to add a condition number 6, that the applicant to be required to make the site fully accessible per ADA requirement.
Per ADA requirements and the local building official. Would that satisfy you?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
And one other comment.
And then I think we had one also about review.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to bring up.
Go ahead and make the amendment.
Whoa. You've got the amendment.
Have you do that.
You've got an amendment.
Yeah.
So somebody has to second
Should
the
we act
amendment.
on the item
Somebody has
6?
to-
The maximum,
But somebody still has to second the amendment,
that's right.
right?
Okay, so you make the amendment. Do we have a second on Commissioner Wu's
I'll second his
requesting ADA, meet ADA requirements and the local building official?
So then you can.
Motion by Wu, second by Talley.
You can have discussion on the amendment, vote on the amendment, and you can amend the amended resolution if you want.
And I
Sounds
need-
like what?
I
Okay.
need some clarification on that. So we did get a second on the amendment.
I seconded his
Okay.
amendment.
I may add one as well, since we're getting creative. creative here with our
Well,
amendments.
you've got
we got
to, you
to
can't
vote on
amend,
this
you've
one.
got, that's the motion that's on the floor. So
We
you
can
can't
have
amend
up to three.
that
It would be a
yet.
new amendment
So
after
we're
the
gonna-
motion.
You have to finish this vote.
Okay, so we've got a motion and a second. All in favor of adopting, or including Commissioner Wu's?
Chair, there are up to
That's it.
3 motion allowed on the floor, so that's a second, so.
And he can amend the
if Commissioner
amendment.
But we
Blackman-
have to make it,
No, he can
a vote
amend
on
it.
each one.
If I can
After all three
chime in
motions,
just to maybe make
please.
things a little bit easier. If these are friendly amendments, if the maker of the original motion accepts them as such, they can be incorporated into the initial motion. If the maker and the second accept them, then we just have one motion on the floor, and we're not forced to go through the mental gymnastics
Okay, so let's-
of Robert's Rules of
Which is
Order.
why I seconded that, so I will accept that amendment
Okay, very
into
good.
the original
Very
motion.
good. So
This is
that
just
one is
making
added.
her life difficult.
Okay, and I just have a quick question for staff.
Okay, Commissioner Blackwell?
Any change to the design, any major change, what happens? Does it come back here?
That would be up to the planning commission to decide with conditions of approval. So right now, as it stands, if there's major modifications, then it would be required to come back. The only thing that was recommended or motioned was to add a condition to remove the eyebrow, and that's a modification, but there was no condition added about other modifications.
So what we have here is if the property owner does not agree with the trellis, which is a major element to the frontage of this building.
It will come back.
Okay. That would be
That was
considered
determined during
substantial.
discussion.
Okay. And do we have a condition that,
Don't need a condition for that.
Shouldn't need one for that.
That's just
That would be
a function
considered a
of- that's a
major
function of the
alteration
code.
to the
Okay.
design.
all right, then I'm good with it.
Would you like
Okay, Commissioner Brown, do
That
you
was
have
legal.
any other comment, or?
I just want to make sure that
I will add an amendment that we have a 6-month and a 1-year review.
after
good.
commencement of
So that's
operation.
condition number 7.
Okay, Commissioner, would you have another comment? Your light's on. Okay.
And
Do we have a-
and wait. Commissioner Kozinski has to agree to the second with this. Yes.
Very good. So we have a motion by Talley, a second by Kaczynski, including, I think it was 7
7
amendments.
Or
all in-
additional conditions.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 7-0, or 6-0, 1. With,
Yes, sorry.
you're welcome.
My mental
No problem at all. Congratulations. We are going to change our routine a little bit and reopen oral and written communications. We have an Eagle Scout project that wants to be discussed and presented to us by Shane Robertson.
Hello, members of the committee, commissioner, and members of the staff. My name is Shane Robertson. I'm from Troop 745, and I'm a Life Scout on my journey to my Eagle. And so I'm not really sure how much you can help me, but I'm looking for a task that if you could set me on for my Eagle.
I would suggest maybe working with Gabriel Perez if he could work as an intern assistant or whatever to maybe promote that.
Well, what is the requirement for this project?
This may be, this is not a legal issue, but I'm an Eagle Scout, and I've been in his shoes before, and my Eagle project was actually with the city that I lived in. I did the exact same thing. So if I can chime in, Mr. Chair?
We would love it. Help us out.
Your best path forward is to go to the other city hall on Monday morning and meet with Gabriel, and he can put you in touch with Public Works, who typically have projects, planting medians, landscaping projects, painting projects. Those are wonderful Eagle projects, and they will qualify. Trust me, I'm currently a Scoutmaster, and they will qualify. So meet with this guy right here. He can put you in touch with the guys and gals at City Hall who can get you a good project.
Right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Talley.
I would just like to commend you on what you're doing, so Nice job, and thank you for coming and speaking to us tonight.
Keep them up.
Yeah.
And thanks for being patient.
You got to
Should've
see
gotten
the
it
inner
earlier
workings
on.
of government right there.
Send him to Randy.
Okay, so we will close the public hearing. We've have a request for a quick 5-minute break by Commissioner Talley. We will reconvene at 5 till.
No water up here tonight. I don't know what's going on. It's falling apart.
Yes, my name is Nestor Mangohig. I'm the senior civil engineer in the traffic division, and I'm excited to be presenting tonight, as all my previous items have all been on consent and weren't really pulled. And so I'll start off by, I have this, you can pull them anytime you need to.
We can reconsider that if you like.
You can reconsider that. I'd be happy to present.
All 72 intersections and traffic?
That's right. I'm going to start off with a very brief background to get us to the two recommendations coming from staff tonight. And then at the end of that, if you want to go into any items in more detail, I'm happy to answer questions on that. So this project was established by the City Council in fiscal year 17, and the goal of the project was to evaluate, design, and construct intersection control at the intersection of Camino Veracruz and Costa, and that's the access to the park. Serves as a secondary access to the schools off of Costa. And the staff conducted neighborhood meetings in April 17, October 18, and February 19, and that basically spanned the planning stages of this project, all the way from service level evaluation to concept feasibility. And those 3 meetings gave staff the chance to check in with the public that was interested as far as where we were in the process, and able to give us or provide us more input as we progress through the project. So when we started the project, the intersection control that was being evaluated was a minor stop control, which is what it is today, an always stop where every direction stops, a traffic signal, and a roundabout. We collected data both before and after the La Plata and Del Rio extensions, and I'll get into that in a little more detail in a few slides. But through the project, basically the minor stop control, the always stop control, and the roundabout was removed from contention, which left the traffic signal. Now I do want to point out that at least as long as I've been involved with this project, every step of the way the preferred alternative was the traffic signal. So the first recommendation tonight is that the traffic signal be installed at Camino Veracruz in Costa. And what that would provide is positive vehicle control. If you're familiar with the operations there now, we have school crossing there. And when kids are crossing, we've got a very good crossing guard that works that intersection, but you'll get aggressive drivers that will shoot the gap. So as soon as there's a large enough gap that they can fit, sometimes they'll go right through. You've got courteous drivers and your aggressive drivers, but the signal will provide a red indication when the crossing is on. It will provide that defined crossing phase, and based on all of our analysis, the signal would operate at an acceptable level during the peak hour and all other hours of the day. And just to reiterate, the crossing guard would remain at this location even with a traffic signal. And we've got several different signals around the city that have crossing guard services, and I could not imagine any of them going from a signal with the positive control back to something where you've got a minor street and you have a crossing guard trying to stop through traffic. So I think this would very much help the crossing situation at this location. Now getting back to some of the count data, before La Plata and Del Rio was extended, Camino Veracruz in the vicinity of the school had an ADT of average daily traffic of about over 13,000 vehicles per day. Once Del Rio and La Plata were extended, the volume dropped, and we've counted more than one occasion, and the volumes now range from 8,600 to 9,300 vehicles per day. And based on the Centennial General Plan, the forecast traffic volumes on this segment are expected to be 9,000 to 10,000 vehicles per day in the long range. So what you see today is pretty much what is going to be there for the long term. And this table here is actually from OCTA, and it's just meant to illustrate the carrying capacity of a 4-lane divided roadway, which is how Camino Veracruz is configured today, and there's a lot of excess capacity there. The green circle, 2 lanes divided, show that a 2-lane divided still has quite a bit of carrying capacity and can still operate acceptably.
What are the different levels of service represent there, A, B, C, D, E?
They're kind of like grades in school, where you have your level of service C, which is regionally considered acceptable, where you still, when you start to get into D and E, you start to see more of the gridlock on the daily basis. So A and B largely is free flow, and particularly on this segment, it is A, B, but outside of the very peak hours, there is very little traffic on this roadway.
Our city standard is C, I believe, that we are better.
Yeah, and in fact, we don't use the ADTs anymore as an indication. With the Centennial Plan, we started looking at intersections because they're the bottleneck. Even if you have a certain number of lanes, it's the intersection that controls. But this just shows, it's trying to drive the point because these are what our original LOS tables were based on, and it does have excess capacity. So the second recommendation from staff is to implement a lane reconfiguration from Riachuelo to Arbolado. And what that will provide are wider bike lanes. Right now you have 4 to 5 foot bike lanes in some cases. In front of the school at most of the day or much of the day, you'll see vehicles parked in the bike lane. So bikers coming down the hill have to merge with the mixed flow lanes. This concept would provide an additional buffer between the wider bike lanes and the vehicle lanes, and it will provide an opportunity for additional parking, and that's both for the pickup and drop off for the school, and also for overflow parking that the park sometimes generates on the weekends. This concept will also decrease crossing exposure for pedestrians. Today, they're crossing 4 lanes of through traffic and then a turning lane. With this, they will be crossing 2 lanes of through traffic and a turning lane. And the reason why we chose the limits of Riachuelo and Arbolado, one is to implement in front of the school and the park, but also because over the years we have received complaints from residents that try to access from Riachuelo, Belo Panorama, and Arbolado. And if you're familiar with those roads and try to drive it, as a driver looking left, which is the critical side, the road bends back toward the drivers. So just by virtue of the roadway configuration, you've got limited sight distance. And with the narrow bike lane, once you actually pull your car out there 4 or 5 feet, maybe at the most, it feels like you're going to get T-boned right away. So with this configuration, they're able to pull out 8 plus 7 plus 2. They're able to pull out almost 17 feet, and that greatly increases sight distance. I tested all of the intersections out on numerous occasions, and it really helps. Speed control or speeding is one of the biggest complaints on this road. And by going down to 2 lanes, you will see some speed control because of the platoon effect. If you sit at the intersection and watch people drive down, you will see some people trying to obey the speed limits. So there are some drivers cognizant of how they're driving and what the speed is, and you'll also see people who just don't care. So they're going around the people that are trying to be good on that road, or not braking at all. So you'll see both of them. But with this configuration, the drivers that are obeying the speed limits will meter those behind them. And we've seen that in other areas that we've done this type of restriping. Another benefit of this configuration is reduced pavement maintenance, because you're now putting all the driving vehicles in a smaller cross-section. When it comes time to overlay, you've got less of the cross-section that usually needs repair because the wear and tear is confined to a smaller space. Now, despite the ADTs, I think the most common fear about going down to this configuration I hear is that it doesn't, or there's fear that it won't accommodate the peak hour school traffic. And in the staff report, I did make mention of a school that's outside our agency. I'm very familiar because my oldest son just spent 3 years there, and then in 1 and 2 years, my 2 other kids will start their 3-year stints at this school. So I've been in this pickup and drop off for quite a while. And this school has an enrollment of close to 1,400 students, and they all start and end at the same time, so there's no stagger. In our situation, we've got an elementary school and a middle school that are staggered, so you have about a little less than 50% that occur at one time, and then the over 50% at the other time. The Mesa Drive, which is the street that my middle school that I referred to in the report is on, has a higher ADT than Camino Veracruz by several thousand. But I think the most telling point in terms of operations is that Mesa Drive, in the westbound direction only, has close to 800 vehicles in that 1 hour, whereas Camino Veracruz has about 750 combined in both directions, and eastbound is actually slightly higher than the westbound. So these are nowhere near the level of volumes that would create congestion and gridlock, so long as we're careful in designing the right turns that occur at Sarmentoso and into the park, so as not to prohibit those when there is some stacking that turn the corner. So the next step after this is to forward your recommendations to the city council and then to get council direction to proceed with the design and construction. So that concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Commissioner Talley.
Nestor, thank you for doing this. As you know, I have two children that go to these schools, one in the middle school, one in the elementary school, and they've been going there for the past, 6 years. Well, the middle schooler's been going there for 6 years, and lived in the neighborhood and drove this intersection probably, I'd say on average, 3 to 4 times a day. We still go over there. My wife parks up in the park to pick up our kids, and it's quite the game of getting out. You've got to wait for the crossing guard to give you a break, and then you got to basically squeal to get out of there. Certainly applaud you for taking a look at the signal here. A couple of things that I want to make sure that were in your calculus here is, are you aware of the reconfiguration of the flow that's going to occur next school year?
I am aware.
And so today in the school, there's this kind of what used to be back in the day, the bus lane where they drop people off. So that's not going to be used for pickup and drop off, and you're going to have a different type of stacking and queuing that may be occurring that may in some ways back traffic up even more onto Veracruz that are turning onto Sermentosa. Was that?
I can guarantee you that I'm also aware of the change in kindergarten next year as well. And I'm familiar with changing plans around schools, and I fully expect that when this is implemented, it's probably not going to work, or there's going to be room for improvement. There always is. So, I mean, that's not factored into queuing, but as soon as we notice anything that's different from what we have today, because I'm very familiar with how far it goes beyond that corner, then we're going to be on the phone with the school trying to make things better. I mean, we wouldn't have supported, the school district's decision to end staggering. Usually when schools approach us, our first recommendation is to stagger or stagger further. So we're expecting that we're going to have some issues around several schools at the beginning of the next school year.
And just for my fellow commissioners, they're going to be adding about 100 kindergarten drop-offs. So the operations right now, kindergarten, occurs at a slightly different time frame. It's staggered from the elementary school, and it will not be staggered. So that will increase the operation.
Please clarify, what will not be staggered, the junior high and the elementary?
No. So the middle school and so there's actually kind of like 5 kind of staggerings right now. So you've got normal drop-off for the elementary school, you've got kindergarten drop-off for the early birds, and you've got kindergarten drop-off for what they call the late owls, then you got pickup for the early birds, pickup for the late owls, and then pickup for the elementary school, then pickup for the middle school. I forgot their drop-off in there, but it's going to be all-day kindergarten, so you'll have K through 5 drop-off and pickup at one point, and you'll have middle school drop-off and pickup at one point. So you kind of do stack the elementary school with about an additional 100 kids at one time.
100 plus that were currently being picked up earlier and out of that peak hour are now being included into it. So you'll see it at both the front and the rear operations.
So the traffic signal, you haven't heard me talk about lane diets before, but maybe you have, I don't know. But would it be feasible to install the traffic signal and then, if warranted and necessary, do the lane diet at a later time?
Yes, and actually I wanted to clarify that the 2 recommendations don't necessarily have to go together, or like you said, that even if they were both approved, that they may not happen at the same time anyway. We do have Camino Veracruz part of an upcoming slurry. It's either next fiscal year or the following, so there may be some opportunity to try to bring that up closer, but by all means, a signal can go in with the current configuration and then later do a restripe. That's not an issue.
Okay, because, like I said, I drive this all the time, and so I will echo your point about the aggressive driver. Had one today as I was coming down. It was actually from the right lane was the aggressive driver, which was very surprising, on, the crossing guard. As soon as they're, 2 steps on the inside of that white line, they were zipping past them.
Someone in a Tesla?
It was not a Tesla. I could have, But I am concerned about the potential impact of reducing that lane. In the general plan, this is an arterial, correct?
Right, and then like our other streets that we've come before with the restriping, we'd be going through the similar process with OCTA. And one of their primary measures of whether or not, from a staff standpoint, to allow that are those tables. And that's why I pointed them out, because they're there and people do reference them. We just don't as part of our own general plan, but we would be going through OCTA, and they do fall, the volumes fall in line with other streets that they've accommodated for.
You just had a bunch of them up there, and the last one from City Council for another approval.
You're talking about the Grant on El Camino Real or some of the other roads? We have several streets that are being reconfigured.
There's a lot of homes in this general area, and that's one of my reticences on the lane diet there, is that this is I guess, north-south kind of bypass, as it were, to the freeway if necessary, right? You can kind of skirt from Vista Hermosa all the way over to Camino de Estrella with this road. Otherwise, going from Rosa's Donuts to Lowe's is very handy with this road as well, just in case you guys ever have to do that. Yeah. Okay. I think those are all my questions.
Commissioner Kozinski.
Yeah, I have a question. I travel this road frequently also, and I have noticed, and I don't know if you've taken note of this, is while you're driving south around 8 o'clock in the morning while all these drop-offs are going off, the blinking yellow light that you have there is directly in front of the sun. So if you have lights there, for traffic lights, how are you going to make sure that those traffic lights are seen?
Well, different times of year, that's a tough one, because different times of year the sun's moving all the time, and you're always running into that situation. But kind of related to another point that I heard about lights is that there are ways with program visibility to kind of aim the lights so that they're shaded and or pointing in certain directions. Caltrans does it quite a bit when you've got a lane that needs to turn next to a lane that goes straight, but you don't want them to see that until a certain point. So there's different ways to handle that. But by and large, sunlight behind signals, that's an issue that, depending on the time of the year, you'll probably see that at one signal or the other.
I've noticed that in some places in the city, you have an extra light that's sitting next to the sidewalk, for instance.
Well, most places, that's intentional, and that's for redundancy. So that's one of the reasons that if you can't see a light that's directly overhead, you'll see one to the side, and you do that for both through movements and left turns. That'll all be designed.
Is that something that was looked at?
Oh, yeah. You have to, we've already got the contract that looked through the evaluation, so we have a designer on board, and you have to provide the redundancy and the different signal faces, so not only on the mast arm, but it would be on either side of the road. And in fact, not to sidestep the issue, but there's projects happening that are going to be converting some signals out there from protected to protected permissive. So we're replacing not only the mast arm heads, but also on the side, the 1A poles. So I envision this, if it gets approved as a signal, would be a protected permissive with the new flashing yellow arrow, and that would be, I believe, on 3 different locations, so directly overhead, left and right, but at least 2 for sure.
So can you, the protected permissive, that's where you get the flashing yellow arrow?
That is.
Okay.
So they're very much the same intent, and we have many of the protected permissive with the green ball. So, but the new standard is now the flashing yellow arrow, because it cleans up some confusion about what's happening on the opposite side of you. So we're changing a few out with 2 different projects, and then if this does go in, I imagine this would be one as well.
And one more question, option number 2 with the bike lane. Is there going to be any kind of a physical barrier between the cars and the bicycles?
No. Painted buffer.
Is there, have you looked at anything like those rubber poles or that stick up, something that if some car
Between the
veers
cars,
off?
between the cars and the buffer?
Between the cars and the bike lane, yeah.
Well, that prohibits you from entering the parking lane. So I know some other cities have tried to do that in certain areas in order to just kind of create these breaks where you can park. But when you're in an area that will utilize the entire parking area, that usually causes more issues than it solves.
Are the bumps along the road very expensive or even looked at?
Like speed cushions or speed humps, those type of things?
Not necessarily speed humps, but just let
dots.
Dots that just shake your car?
And just let you know that, hey, you're veering off your lane, you're going to hit a bicycle.
No, they're not very expensive, but you need to use the correct detail when you're dealing with a bike lane. So there are certain details that are in the Caltrans manual that you need to follow, certain widths and certain types of raised pavement markers, but we can certainly look at, if you're looking for both the audible and the physical feedback from driving over those, then, there are some options that do that.
Okay.
And then again, just to go back on this concept that was in there, it's purely a concept plan. So if we are given direction to move forward with it, we will refine it. And that includes the spacing at the corners in order to make sure that we don't back up at the intersections. And in terms of looking at types of materials, that would be something to consider as well.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Wu?
Thank you. I like the idea that to have the intersection to be fully signalized. As a separate item, I will support the road diet to reduce the lane from 4 to 2. But my concern is, how does that affect the level of service at the intersection?
That we did analyze it as a 2-lane roadway, and it's A. The volumes on the road are not very high. I think what people imagine when they see it at the worst is the gridlock that they're seeing as opposed to the actual numbers of vehicles that are coming through. So like most schools in the area, you'll have a 15, 20-minute period where it's just busy and there's no getting around that because you've got all the activity with the drop-off and the dwell time and all of that. But our service level analysis was done as a 2-lane initially, and then we went back to a 4-lane. So we've run it all with both existing conditions and forecast conditions, and it operates fine.
You mentioned that the peak hour vehicle is 771 vehicles per hour. But you also said the real peak lasts only 15 minutes. So during that real peak time, it's much worse.
It is.
Currently, there are 4 lanes, and the cars can go through the intersection when the lights are green. And then once you reduce to 2, they're going to wait for much longer.
Not that much longer. The analysis that we did, it's called peak hour factor, where you consider how that 15-minute peak looks in relation to the peak hour. So we have the counts for that intersection. So in our analysis, we did apply that. Now, that's not to say that because you have a level of service A that you won't see queuing. You will. It's around a school, but it's not going to be gridlock, which I think is what some people fear, as long as the corners are designed right.
What is the level of service after, if we were to adopt both recommendations?
A.
Stays at A?
Yes.
And then what is if it were a roundabout, I would be more inclined to support it. And then why?
Where did that go?
Well, apparently roundabout is better than the signalized intersection in terms of the level of service or throughput of that intersection, is it? That's the reason you study that as a first
roundabouts can be more efficient than signals, yes. Roundabout's not feasible at this location.
You mentioned grading. Is that the only reason?
Well, grading, which then leads to cost. So the national guidance, which is in the staff report, wants a 4% grade through the roundabout. For both approach speeds and for tipping of vehicles that are going around the roundabout, large profile vehicles going around. Through the intersection, we've got 9%. East of the intersection, we have 11%. So in order to get to 4% grade, I know we did a cost analysis for an 8% compromise grade when we were trying to see if something fit in between. And I did write in the report 1.2 million. I will correct it in the council report, but the cost was actually 1.6 million because we pressed the designer to take a closer look because I thought it sounded low. So in order to get to an 8% grade, you're looking at 1.6 million, not inclusive of any utility impacts or what you'll probably have retaining wall type impacts as well. So
Okay, well, the
cost-wise, it doesn't fit nearly within the allocated budget, number
Okay.
one. And then also from just a liability standpoint, if you can't get to that 4%, not many cities want to be the guinea pig when it comes to things that will open you up to liability. And in this case, the grade is just too much to overcome when you consider all the other issues associated
Okay.
with it.
Now, the roundabout doesn't have to be center aligned with the right-of-way because you have a large land at the corner next to the tennis courts and on the other side. It can be asymmetrical.
And that's how we designed it.
That's how we designed it.
When we did the concept view, we actually pushed it toward the tennis court, toward that side, because we could not take right away from the residents. And then we had, the park is city property, so we did have to shift it that way in order to accommodate. And that also was able to provide, from a plan level anyway, more of a splitter island, which is a good thing. But it's still, in terms of the vertical grade, that's where it became infeasible.
Okay, back to the conclusion. Even after we, if we change the intersection to 2 travel lanes total, 1 lane on each direction with the signals on all 4 directions, the level of service at the intersection will still be A.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And then actually, just to clarify that, if you're familiar with Camino Veracruz and you drive there most times of the day, Camino Veracruz has the green. It just rests on green because there's not a lot of side street conflicts, so this is going to be very similar. So when side street vehicles do set off the detection, then it will turn green to accommodate. And when someone pushes the PED button, it'll turn green to accommodate.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, very good. Let's close this part of the discussion and open it up for public comment. We have 2 cards. Did anyone else want to submit a card that hasn't?
Sure.
Okay. So first I have Pat Coper at Discane? Diskin.
Hi. I have a lot of interest in this because I live there. I live right in the corner of Costa, and I'm also the crossing guard. So.
Thank you.
I've been the crossing there for 4 years, and when I started, there was a lot of traffic because the Sarmentosa wasn't through. But now it's not so bad. The traffic is cut way down. I have crazy drivers that I deal with, most of them at the junior high time, because parents change when they get junior high kids. And I have a lot of concerns about the traffic signal for many different reasons. The first one is because of the light shining in my house, and I talked to Nestor, and he said that there's ways that you can point it down, and so it won't shine in my bedrooms at night. And I also have a terrible concern about my junior high kids standing on the street while I push the button, which I will do all the time, when they're screwing around over there, and not having that buffer for them, I think would be a travesty. I think you're asking for a problem. I have about 25 children that I cross that don't live in my neighborhood, that park along my street on Costa because they don't want to go into the parking lot. And so I cross a lot of kids that don't actually live there, that don't walk to or from school. And because of the number of kids, I'm afraid that with them screwing around, that they're going to, like they did today, they're going to fall off the curb. I'm scared to death about that. I'm also afraid of those crazy people making right-hand turns as I'm standing there with my stop sign, and they're going to have a green light. They're still going to be able to be making right-hand turns. That scares me. And the progressive really won't affect me if it's a progressive signal, so it turns a yellow flashing, because most of those people are going left. It's mostly the people making the right-hand turns coming out that I'm really concerned about. So maybe, I mean, I want the road diet because I live there too, and I walk on the street twice a day, and those cars are crazy. They come into the bike lane as they're going up the hill, and then as you're going down the hill, they get really close to the cars that are parked on the side by the front of the school. So those are the things that I'm most concerned about, but I hope that I think that signal's inevitable. When we started this, it was supposed to be a roundabout, and I was like, yay, yay, yay. But I think it's going to be a signal, so I just hope that moving forward with a signal, that you do that buffer, please, because just with the number of kids on that street, I believe it'll slow down traffic, which is a terrible problem, and will help with the safety of the kids, as opposed to, I mean, the signal is just for the drivers, so I'd prefer no signal at all, but I know it seems like we're going to get one, so if that's the case, then please put a buffer in.
Thank you very much. Ingrid Ethernach?
Anyway, hi Commissioners, thank you for this time. I'm a parent of a Truman Benedict student and a Bernice Ayers student. I do take my kids to school in the mornings, and then I pick them up in the afternoon. They have to cross the street to get to my car. Like Pat said, we live a little bit higher up the street, so up the hill, so I pick them up and they cross over to meet me. Whatever we do here, it's of grave concern to us. I myself have almost been hit on that street. Crossing the street about 3 years ago, there were no cars coming, so I started to cross. Halfway through, a car was flying down the hill, never put on their brakes, never looked at me. I had to backtrack to, like, not get hit. So that is always very scary to me. When I see my kids crossing, even though it's safe, I always think they could still get hit, because I almost did. I'm so grateful that we have Pat, who is the world's best crossing guard. She's amazing. She takes great care of the kids. She makes them stay until it's safe to cross. Sometimes she can't be there, though, if she has vacation or there's a substitute crossing guard. The other crossing guards that we've had there before, they're scary. They don't really take such great care to wait for all the traffic to stop before they have kids enter the crossing lanes. So it's very concerning every single day that not just my kids, but all these kids in the neighborhood are, put in danger. I have seen so many cars drive through while Pat is in the crossing, like on the street. She takes her life into her own hands every single day for all of us. I myself have witnessed so many cars almost hit each other, or just, you see the anger in the parents' faces trying to get through and try to scoot their way through as kids have already passed the first couple of lanes. Pat has had to actually go up to different, parents' windows and yell at them for not respecting the rules, which is so crazy. People don't care. They're in a rush. They're on their phones. They're just distracted. So it's imperative that we do something here, and hopefully whatever is the right thing will come about. But if it is a light, we need more than just the lights there. We need flashing lights on the actual pavement. We need flashing lights up the hill so cars become aware that there's, it's going to be time to stop. Because cars run the lights all the time anyway near the reserve. Whether it's because of the sun in your eyes situation, I know what you're talking about with that. So I think the signal is important, but it is also a false sense of hope. There's so much more that would be needed to go with that, including still having a crossing guard, flashing lights, some warning up the hill. So all of this is, it's really important to do something. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Cindy Scott?
Thanks. I'm Cindy Scott. I have a parent. I have 3 kids, and they will all be at Truman next year. I'll be part of the kindergarten all day, 1 drop off, 1 pickup. I actually live in Rimrock, but I'll come up the hill and then make the left-hand turn in the morning and park up top. I also take a neighbor child to school, like a junior high BAM student. And I've noticed that it's really hard to get out of the neighborhood or out of that park, because there are a lot of, like, BAMs especially, with so many students. The language immersion program continues at BAMs, so there's a lot of, like, just more parents turning left at the junior high pickup and drop off, and it not being protected. They can only turn left if there's someone in the crosswalk, and I don't even know if it's legal, but that's when you turn left out of that parking lot, is when the crossing guard is crossing children. So I support a signal. I also support the lane diet, just having a buffer between the school. I always worry as I'm driving down Veracruz home and I drive slow enough to stop if, some rascally brother pushes his sister into the street, which I've watched. I mean, my son would do it. So to have a buffer for children walking home would be really nice. So, thanks.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you. Okay, and I do want to disclose that we received numerous emails that were provided by the planning department to us that they received on this issue. Are there any of the comments that the public made that you'd like to address or clarify their concerns?
I do. In terms of the signal design, one thing that we're trying not to do is design at the dais, but I am aware that this location would need some advance warning. Right now, the current mast arm, which is just warning about the actual crosswalk, would be removed, obviously, and then I think that may be an opportunity to provide some advanced flashers upstream from the intersection. Now, in terms of flashing lights at crosswalks in intersections, we'll look at that at design. I don't know that that's allowed per the MUTCD. Typically, when you see those, they're at mid-block crossings. The guidance on some of those mid-block crossings are, the recommendations anyway are 100 feet or so away from an intersection to avoid a lot of that left turn conflict out there. But we'll look at those things in design. Should we get to that point?
Okay, Commissioner Brown.
Does the the manual for controlled devices have exceptions for school zones? So you could possibly...
For flashers, not that I'm aware of, but there's a whole separate section for school zone treatments, so we'll look into that if there is.
Protect our crossing guard section so that for the right turn people and all that stuff.
Well, that's one of the reasons why we would maintain a crossing guard there. If you're familiar with other schools like Flora Vista that have the signal there, and I know Pat is very good at doing this, is that once you're establishing the crosswalk, you're getting everyone's attention, you're being loud. And that's the reason why we're not removing the crossing guard, even though signal's going in. So
you feel endangered sometimes on right, people turning right, I think, right?
Oh, yeah, left and right. I mean, people coming left out. So there would be much more controlled, it'd be more controlled chaos with a signal there, but it would improve conditions quite a bit. So.
We have the Marine retired Sergeant Major about a mile away from me, up Talega, and so that they fear her in the intersection over there.
She's actually received noise complaints from adjacent neighbors, but she does a very good job.
Yep.
Commissioner Talley.
Are we to discussion?
Yes, we are.
So I mean, guys, I live and breathe this place every day. Cindy, I think there's a lot of people that go through a lot of tires getting out of the parking lot there. We've got to have some type of intersection control that can assist the crossing guard. I mean, it really is concerning. This is, somebody is going to get hurt if we don't do something about that. I kind of came in here predisposed against a lane diet after reviewing the materials. My concern on the lane diet is that I think the traffic flows are gonna change somewhat next year with the reconfiguration of the drop-offs, and especially when we get down to Veracruz and Sermentosa. And what I'd like to see this body do is forward a recommendation to do the traffic signal and to put on our agenda for early September a look at the lane diet, because I think you'll be able to see the traffic patterns on that very, very quickly. In late August, and if we're really talking about an overlay that's going to be going on there soon, it doesn't sound like we're losing anything by kind of holding that in check for 6 months, and we can really kind of see what the traffic flow is going to look like, because maybe we need to have some different type of lane markings. Maybe we need to have a larger turn turn zone on Sermentosa, because right now, you get traffic that can go around. So traffic will turn on Sermentosa from Veracruz, and you can get a second lane of traffic that'll come around that, like teachers and other people that are actually going into the school parking lot, because the traffic dovetails to the right. Well, that's going to go away. So you could have a potentially much larger.
That actually remain, and that's what I was referring to when we have to look at the turns onto Sarmentoso and into the park more closely, is that there's currently a red curb there for quite a distance, and that creates that opportunity to both stack if you're going to try to get in that lane and then to go around it. So with this configuration, we would still need to maintain some red curb, and it might be more because of.
Well, the problem is you can't
change.
get around it into the parking lot anymore, because the parking lot could be potentially blocked because of the way that the traffic flow is going to be in there.
Okay.
So it's not the street side, it's the ingress side.
And then if anything, I think one of the consequences of that would be more stacking potentially outside.
And I just want you to design it right the first time, because, you know, I'm a creature of habit as well, and I kind of want to relearn it once instead of having to relearn it twice. I know, me relearning something, admitting to that.
Rise to the challenge.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think, there's days, the new math is crazy. But I think we can kind of accomplish both things and not, bless you, Cindy, and not create a problem. I think that would give us a chance to make sure we do it right on that, but I don't want to delay the signal, so I hope that wouldn't delay that.
No, and just to talk about timing, any slurry that did happen would not happen by September. You know,
Okay.
where we have a lot of projects going on right now, and.
That's not even in the SIP now, you're proposing it for next year.
Right, it's in the future fiscal year, so.
You're about 2 years out.
Expedite it, we'd have to be creative in bringing it forward, so it wouldn't beat the new.
But the signal could happen quickly.
The signal could be designed and implemented much quicker probably, because it's already, if not fully, then very much funded. And
Okay.
we'll get through those details, you know, as we go through design. But yeah, the PS&E for the signal itself would move much quicker, I think.
So how long would that take? Assuming this body forwards that recommendation and the city
We
council
go to city
accepts it.
council next month, and then we've got the authorization. Like I said, we already have a contract or a consultant on board for design, whatever that happened to be. I would imagine that'd take a few months, and you'd bid it for, you know, you bid it for a few months. It's still not going to be a quick process. I think you're looking at the best of things, still 6 months before you can even consider getting a contractor out there.
So maybe by the end of the year?
No.
That's tight. That's just, it's tight with the workload, but we don't have to go through the whole PSA and obtaining a consultant, because a lot of times that's the bottleneck, is just putting it out, you know, for RFP. We've got that already. So as soon as council gives their blessing to design, we can tell them, let's start designing. They already did all the base mapping, so it's just a matter of laying it out and going through a lot of the little details that we're hearing, and getting it out to bid at that point.
So I actually went to one of the, I think it was the October 2018 meeting that I went to, and just kind of sat and listened, and a completely elevated level of respect for what you guys have to deal with. You know, at this body, we see, you know, sometimes some discombobulated comments that come in, but you guys really were very effective at taking a very wide range of comments and emotions and kind of focusing that in. So hats off to the traffic and to you, I mean, personally, for doing that. I was very impressed.
Okay, did you have any more comments, Don?
Yeah, I'm going to support the project, signal light first, and make sure we get our lifeguard protected. The road diet, I think, is essential, along with the buffered lanes. It's a shame it's with the SIP, it probably isn't a year or so out, I guess. This particular slope and this particular stretch of highway would need a road diet, I think, anyway. If there wasn't a school there, you know, I mean, there's just so much speeding going on there, you'd want to have some speed control. I don't even know, because of its nature, it would be, after it's in and they're still speeding, would it even be in the realm for speed cushions of some sort if you needed because of speed? Because of the slope, 11%, people just free wheel down there. I mean, they just put it in neutral or leave it in park and just let it accelerate on its own oftentimes.
So if you're looking at options beyond, you know, the road diet in terms of vertical devices, 6% is typically 6 to 8% is being the high side is typically the highest that you want to implement in, because there's concerns about just losing control if a fast vehicle does hit a vertical device.
Correct.
They'll probably veer off the road. So I think at that point, if you're looking at something beyond, then it'll probably be horizontal measures. What that is, who knows? I mean, there's an open toolbox for that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I think the first step would be to implement that road diet, because there will be some attenuation from the drivers that do obey the speed limit. Like I said, that'll make some people mad, but it'll slow people down.
So I know you're a parent and you're involved, but to me, the road diet should come almost first, other than the fact that the way the SIP, the capital investment program works, the way the city lays out their program, where it's at with this road.
And that's not to be determined. I think there might be options
But to me, it should be the other way around, and this, but, you know, well, I think what the school needs is whatever can get there. You need both of these, and I'm gonna support it as fast as you can get it there.
So the traffic signal will solve, in many respects, the fact that we're using the crossing guard as a gating measure to be able to leave the parking lot for the park when you get kids, because we're having to wait on her to be able to do that. And to be clear, if you're going to be looking at the road diet after the reconfiguration of the school, that's my only concern with it, is I want to make sure that you're able to take the kind of the world as it exists post, you know, full-day kindergarten instead of today when you're designing the lanes there. And it sounds like that's the
And just another caution to the fact that there's a new circulation pattern going on.
It could change.
It could change. It could change a week later, because that's happened at other schools where it just clearly doesn't work from the start. So it's something that we could observe, and if it seems to work for the school and it's going to stick around for a while, then we'll make sure that whatever we might do on a road diet lane configuration fits with it. It's fine with me.
Can I say one thing about the kindergarten drop-off? I'm going to talk to the PTA, and they're planning on having those kids be picked up in the school district,
Okay,
in the park.
we can only take comments at the podium there. No, that's all right. Commissioner Blackwell.
Yes, thank you. So Nestor, one of the speakers suggested a flashing light farther up the hill. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think there's really a need for that, or do you think that the current design is adequate to meet?
We might need that. It might be advisable to do something like that because it's on a curve. So that's something we'll look at, is sight distance.
Yeah.
I'm not going to rule it out at this point. So what it might look like is a mast arm up there with a signal ahead. And there might be a signal ahead that is actuated to flash on certain phases. Who knows? But we'll look at that in design.
Thank you.
Okay, so in theory here, we've got the requirement to make a recommendation to City Council. One, to approve a traffic signal and approve a conceptual striping design, neither of which are final designs and are going to evolve as they go. And the staggering of them, it sounds like it's going to occur naturally with just the process of things. So do we have a motion that
I'll make the motion.
For a recommendation?
I read the planning commission to the city council a recommendation to approve this traffic signal at the intersection of Camino Veracruz Costa, and to approve the conceptual striking plans for Camino Veracruz from Richuelo to Arbolado.
Second that.
We have a motion by Brown, second by Talley. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Passes 6-0-1. Congratulations.
Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, staff did a great job on these.
Look forward to this happening sooner rather than later.
Cindy, you have the best assistant coach as a husband.
He's also putting the kids to bed.
Okay, the next item will be old business. We have none. And following that is reports of commissioners and staff.
Quick question, when do we get to new business? Do it?
We already did it.
That was.
We were in it.
Oh, well, I wasn't finished.
The traffic thing.
Okay, we will reopen new business.
So I had a citizen reach out to me on traffic signs that are for the new lift, and I don't know if this is something I just asked you to stay because they're signs. So we normally have signs that are kind of rounded.
The beveled signs as opposed to the sharp edge signs.
Sharp edge
We
signs.
talked to the gentleman, and I know that maintenance is looking at that. What we had, what the concern is that there are signs for the lift. I think there's some of the informational signs that are at, kid level, and the resident pointed out that typically signs are more beveled, and these have sharper edges, so he was just concerned about, if someone fell off a bike and hit it, that they might get hurt because there's sharp signs. So talk to the director, and it's in maintenance hands now. I don't know that we're putting an effort forward to wholesale change out the signs, but as they need replacement, then we'll look at changing the standard. One thing we looked at was whether or not they met clearance for like ADA and just signs otherwise, and they do. So I could let them know that we heard the issue again. I assume it's the same person.
I don't think so. I wouldn't know because this person hasn't complained before.
Okay.
Because he was just talking to me.
It was a friendly conversation when it came into the city, so.
Yeah, no, but I mean, he's like, do you know who I talked to?
Okay.
And he was kind of just pointing out, so, well, we have a traffic item on the agenda Wednesday, so I don't know if they have anything. But it's up by the reserve is where this one was brought up.
Yeah, I think there's
Vista
several.
Hermosa.
They're on Vista, right, on Veracruz. So,
Okay.
I mean, that's
Okay.
something that's in with the director and maintenance.
Thank you. That's all I got.
Commissioner, let's see, you want new business or on the next?
Other report.
Okay. Let's close new business. Old business, we have none. We're up to reports.
Last week, we had the Coastal Advisory Committee. The committee recommended the City Council to establish a stakeholder advisory committee for peer bacterial characterization study. This ad hoc committee will consist of subject matter experts on water quality testing and review from various government agencies as well as nonprofit organizations, along with a representative from Coastal Advisory Committee. So this was unanimously supported last night by the City Council, and also last night the City Council supported a letter requesting federal funding support for beach sand replacement. That was carried out by Army Corps of Engineers a number of years ago, but the fund dried last year because of lack of funding. This time the city is asking our representative in Congress to ask for money to resume that effort.
Yeah, I was there. Actually, the letter is a combined letter from 3 cities. So we, the city, our city, and Solana Beach, and one other in San Diego County, we're in the design phase, and we put our money into the pot, but the Army Corps of Engineers didn't get funded on their side of it for the design phase for the sand replenishment. And so the Army Corps of Engineers keep looking at, there's no real the East Coast gets all their sand all the time because it's always from a hurricane recovery, and so that becomes a disaster funding. So what they're really trying to do is we're trying to go to the congressional districts for the 3 cities to try to push down, because the cost-benefit ratios aren't quite there, to get the design phase going and finished. So we've got our money in the pot. We've got our state grant from Boats and Waterways, but it's the federal government side that's not getting the funds to finish the design phase, and we'll probably have the same battle when it comes time to actually get the sand put down on the beach. So that's where Mr. Wu's coming from. So it's a facet that I think none of us were really aware of until recently, so thanks for bringing that up.
Okay, and then we have our May meeting of the 22nd of May. This space will not be available to hold our meeting in. The city council has is it a budget meeting or? Budget meeting in this space, and I had discussed with Gabriel that I hate holding and putting back applicants for 2 weeks because we can't get a space, and wondered if everyone would be amenable to move it to Thursday, 23rd. If we could get a quorum and not make applicants wait an additional 2 weeks.
May 23rd?
Yeah.
That's a Thursday?
Mm-hmm. And we could make that decision.
I need to get back to
Okay, if we can get back to Gabriel so he knows.
Our next meeting on the 23rd is the proposal.
The next meeting would be the 23rd, not the 22nd.
You know, you got the meeting, Memorial Day weekend, too. You got 5/8.
It is.
Then let's just have it until.
Yeah, is it 5, what's going on 5/8?
Hmm?
No, you're going to have a meeting on the 1st of May.
Okay, instead of this.
No, we have, no, the 8th stays.
Yeah,
it's full.
it stays.
Do we have any pending applications?
There is, so if you look at the tentative future agenda, it mentions Drift Distillery, but I know the preference for that project, and it's an expansion of it, is to go on a meeting after May 8th. So the next meeting would be May 23rd, if that's what we change it to. And then potentially what we're doing with the thrift store ordinance, you can probably recall that, we got some direction from City Council. So what we're looking to do with that.
Which ordinance again?
The thrift store ordinance.
Oh, okay.
So take out the thrift store, so that'll go on its own track for consideration by Planning Commission. Check cashiers, pawn shops, that'll be considered separate from thrift stores. So we're looking to potentially take just the thrift store ordinance to the Planning Commission on the 23rd, potentially.
There's a greater percentage chance than not that I will not be in town on the 23rd.
Yeah, that's one.
So
we can get a quorum.
I'm not going to be on here on the 23rd. I'm available 20th, 21st, 22nd, but not the 23rd.
And the challenge with that is staffing, like I'll be around, but I know like Mel and Eileen, and then, so when we kind of pulled each other, we determined that Thursday was the only time the date that works that week.
If that doesn't work out, that's fine, and it is what
So
it
there's
is.
an alternative facility on that Wednesday, like another conference room the city owns, that could be, it's not televised, I guess.
Camera facilities and whatnot to really pull it off.
I should be available, but to be confirmed.
Yeah, I'm going to have knee surgery on the 1st of May. And so I'm going to
We'll come carry it out.
I'm going to be, bring your truck and throw me in the back and bring me up here. But possibly, most certainly the 8th, I probably won't be here because I'll be probably home laid up. Hopefully by the
So it
end
sounds
of the
like
month,
we're-
I'll be able to hobble around.
Sounds like we're not going to be able to get a quorum.
Well, that's for the 8th of May. That's
I'm talking the 22nd here.
But the 22nd, by then, hopefully I could.
Well, it looks like Commissioner Telly wouldn't be able to make it, or potentially Commissioner Wu, and also.
And Kaczynski
You
doesn't
would
think he
most
can
likely
make
be
it. We don't know about Ruland.
Well, the 23rd, I can't make it on the 23rd, but I can make it on the 22nd.
We won't have the room the 22nd.
Okay.
So we wouldn't have a quorum unless we were sure that Commissioner Ruland would attend.
Yeah. Okay, so doesn't look like we can pull that off. Then the next one is, do we want to cancel the July 3rd meeting, which is the day before the 4th? Are we in agreement?
Gabriel, I have a question regarding that. The city council is going to extend the term of some of our commissioners whose term would expire by the end of June. Do you have any idea about how long it's going to be extended?
Well, or what commissions? It's not necessary. Well, it's not necessary to do all of it. It's only the ones that.
It was done without debate last night, consent. I was there, and I guess you were watching on TV, or I didn't see you in the room, but you were there with Susan. But there was they're still debating the nature of all the commissions and committees, and it's a subset of two on the council, Kathy Ward and Dan Bain, and I guess from all the other sidebar issues they have and they're assigned to, they haven't come to closure on it of various combinations and permutations. So if they decide and they agendize it, they know that they can't pull it off before 30 June, where,
Once we're talking about a meeting in July, there's more uncertainty.
So
we just don't know.
The point I think Commissioner Wu's trying to make is how long are they going to extend everybody? And some people on other, may not choose to serve any longer. And that, in that case, they'll just gap it, I think was the way that, somebody said, but.
Or they just keep the person for
But,
Two meetings.
but it's probably going to be more, I would imagine, be longer than that, maybe 3 or 4 months.
The planning commission is codified, though, where some of those others are more advisory. I mean, you know,
Yeah, we have, what, 4 up this time coming up?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's to consider, but then the other committees and commissions, you know, but the point they're trying to make, and the council bought into that they're going to extend it because they can't pull it off.
Gabriel, I know the council is
But
asking.
that doesn't affect us one way or the other here as far as July 3rd.
I could report back to the Plan Commission on that. I thought there was already some outreach that was done to Plan Commissioners whose terms might expire.
An email.
Okay.
We know that.
Okay.
4 of us are expiring.
Right.
Can we make a decision for a meeting that's going to happen in July?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm in town the 3rd,
I'm in town, but,
but I.
so that's the Wednesday, 4th of July, Thursday. Everybody takes off Friday. It's going to be an early scoot out of town, it sounds
I
like.
kind of hate to ask staff to stick around for the meeting on the 3rd.
Yeah.
That's really my.
So I'm all for, so let's have a
I move we
cancel.
it.
3rd, yes. 2nd. 3rd. 5th.
Okay, it looks like we can have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are in agreement to cancel the 3rd. And then also, since it sounds like people may be extended, there's ethics and harassment training that everybody's going to have to go through, it sounds like.
29th of May, I think it is.
Prevention training.
Excuse me. Well, no. How good are you at harassing? No. Harassment prevention.
I think a bunch of us are on the 29th of May as I
Absolutely.
looked at it.
So,
Gabriel, I have a question.
be aware we need to get that accomplished also.
I have a question for you. I know the city council goes around a different department asking for input. Do you have anything you'd like to share with the commission about community development, the input on how the commissions or committees to be reorganized related to planning commission? Do you have any?
No, I haven't been asked about any of that. That's kind of being done at the city council level.
In a discussion I had, it sounded like they wanted to put one more duty into our basket.
Which was Coastal Advisory Committee, I think it is.
And I think that was all I'd heard. At one time, they talked about the number of members, but I don't know, I don't think that is still on the agenda.
I ended up in a discussion, I guess it was, in City Hall maybe a month ago, when some people in the hallway, it was coming out of a zoning administrator meeting. So I ended up with, turned out the city manager, assistant city manager, and one council member, and they asked me, city manager actually asked the question, why do you have 7 members on the planning commission? Would you do better with 5? And I said, well, here's what you get with 7, and why I got here, because of the Transportation Commission was dissolved and folded in. At the same time, 2002, we dissolved the Cultural Heritage and the Design Review Committee. It was an architectural design committee, so we combined 4 functions in the Planning Commission. So you get those 4 covered with 7. And you can do that with 7 because you can have these meetings without a Brown Act violation.
Right.
And so it makes it for a pretty efficient organization, but those are the 4 functions you really are dealing with. So you deal with engineering along with planning. And so Mr. Mashinoff and Mr. Sun were kind of welcoming the background of how it evolved. And so I said, you take this commission down to 5, then you've got to take a look at the other 3 functions, and you end up with requiring about 10 or 12 or 15 people. So in other words, you have to stand up separate committees to handle the ordinance requirements for cultural heritage and design review, and then I guess traffic can stay with planning at 5. But if you go that route, you're going to end up more complicating your issues if you look at it that way. So it was a discussion I had in City Hall, and they asked the question. That was my answer. So I thought I'd share that with
5 people to be conversant in everything we have to cover is very difficult to do.
Well, plus getting a quorum is more difficult.
It is, so.
Look at the problems we've had tonight trying to get minutes passed.
Would you like a motion to?
I would welcome a motion.
Chair, one item, real quick, just to update the Plan Commission. Last night, the City Council also accepted the parking studies for downtown and North Beach yesterday, so just to let you know where that went.
Well, guess what? They told you don't act and execute on downtown.
Yes, and they want us to implement some of the recommendations very soon.
But Gabriel, I think there was some discussion about in lieu fee, and in fact, in our zoning code, especially around the North Beach, there was something about a certificate of parking waiver or type of thing. Was never implemented, or was it suspended?
So we used to have a parking in lieu fee program.
And we're talking about community parking benefit district.
Benefit
and that type of
district,
thing.
yeah, and that doesn't exist anymore. And we also used to have a parking in lieu fees. That ended in 1998, so we stopped issuing or accepting the waiver of parking spaces and receiving the fee, right? There used to be a fund for that for like the Pierable area and then everywhere else.
And we
outside the city.
suspended it. It's not a result of that parking fee litigation. It's a separate issue.
Separate issue, yes.
That's the parking, beach parking fund, I think is what you're saying.
Oh, that's the same thing?
No, it's different.
It's
That's
different.
That's the one that got sued, and
Right,
they had to get
okay.
the money back.
So the council did request that staff investigate reinstituting parking in lieu fee.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn to the next regular meeting of the Planning Commission. It'll be held on May 8, 2019 at 6 p.m. in council chambers located at 100 Avenida Presidio, San Clemente, California. As to May 8, 2019 study session has been canceled due to a lack of business.
Second.
We have a motion by Talley, second by Brown. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes 601.